also declared a 7-day national mourning period in honor of his predecessor. Volunteer aid workers in Sudan say the paramilitary rapid support forces have been expelling patients from hospitals in West Kordofan state so their wounded fighters can be treated. They also say some patients are being bitten by the RSF fighters. The reports follow battles over the weekend in the town of Sumeima, with both of the Sudanese army and the RSF saying they now control. There's also been intense fighting around El Fasher in the West Darfur region. Action SA party in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province says it does not support President Cyril Ramaphosa's decision to establish a judicial commission of inquiry that will probe allegations of corruption in the police system. The commission will investigate allegations related to criminal syndicates infiltrating the institution itself in the criminal justice system. This after the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi alleged that senior police officials, including the Minister Senzo Mchunu, were corrupt, had links to criminal syndicates and interfered with police operations. Action SA Provincial Chairperson Zwagele Ngwango says Commission of Inquiry results to wasteful expenditure as they bear no fruit of prosecution.
Commissions have become really a waste of money and resources of the states, where this country is struggling financially and economically. Now, we know that we had Zondo Commission and other commissions, not only Zondo Commission, where really reports were done, and the president, even previous presidents, have received these Commission of Inquiry reports and do nothing about them. So we've been saying this commission is just a waste of money, and the president, instead of acting, and also we believe that criminals must be treated like any other criminals. Why there must be commissions of inquiry?
Ramaphosa's party, the African National Congress, however, says he acted with courage by placing the Minister of Police, Senzo Mchunu, on a leave of absence. Bengu Mutsiri says the ANC is confident of a thorough probe that is following.
We are confident that will actually get us to the bottom of this. It's not a one-hit wonder. It's supposed to be a process that enables us to establish if we are safe and also if the institutions that are linked to the police are operating above board, upholding the oath of office that these South Africans that are working there have taken, an oath. So we think that it is an important, it's a responsible decision. The placing of Minister Mchunu on leave of absence.
Lastly, Ukrainian president has thanked the U.S. ahead of President Donald Trump's expected announcement of more military aid. Volodymyr Zelensky made the comments after he met the White House envoy Keith Kellogg in Kyiv. Earlier, Trump announced that the U.S. will send very sophisticated equipment to the Ukrainian capital, including Patriot defense missiles. The BBC's Charlotte Gallagher.
It's incredibly welcome news here because these Patriot missiles are crucial, Ukraine says, for its air defence. And Russia has really changed tactics over the last couple of weeks. It's sending up hundreds of attack drones every night and also ballistic missiles, I think in an attempt to overwhelm the air defences over Ukraine. And Patriot air defence missiles are the best of the best. They're also the most expensive as well. And Ukraine says they are totally vital in keeping the country safe.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, African champions Banyana defeat Mali by 4-0 in their final Group C match to top Group C. And going into the quarterfinals this coming Saturday, facing off with the Teranga Lionesses of Senegal. And then Luka Modric signs a 1-year deal with AC Milan. Details of these and other stories coming up at 6:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
So every morning after the 6 o'clock news, we bring you a concise roundup of the top stories from across the continent over the past 24 hours. We have our team of reporters, analysts and experts who provide the context you need to stay informed, and also guessing in terms of what could be thrown forward going into this new day, this 15th of July, Tuesday. We start at Cameroon, where the president there, Paul Biya's bid for re-election has drawn criticism from opposition and civil society groups. They say his decades in power have undermined democracy. Biya confirmed his candidacy on Sunday ahead of the October 12 vote. Rachel Judah reports.
92-year-old Beda first came to power in 1982, and if re-elected in October, could remain so until he is nearly 100. His re-election bid was widely anticipated, but not formally confirmed until he announced it on social media on Sunday. In the post, Beda said, "The best is still to come." Members of the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement and other supporters have been publicly calling since last year for Beda to seek another term. But opposition parties and some civil society groups argue his long rule has stifled economic and democratic development. Beda scrapped term limits in 2008, clearing the way for him to run indefinitely. But the president's health has been subject to frequent speculation, most recently last year when he disappeared from public view for 42 days.
A Nigerian government delegation led by Vice President Kashim Shettima has arrived in the United Kingdom to escort the remains of former President Muhammadu Buhari back to Nigeria. Buhari passed away at the age of 82 in a London hospital. He's expected to be laid to rest later this week.
The Nigerian government says former President Muhammadu Buhari will be accorded full state honors in recognition of his service to the country. He will be buried in his hometown of Ndoro in Katsina State in the country's northwest region. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu formally announced the death of his predecessor in a statement. He said he died Sunday evening following a prolonged illness, although he didn't disclose what the ailment was. The former president served as military head of state between 1984 and 1985 after taking power in a military coup. Born in December 1942, former President Muhammadu Buhari later also contested in 3 presidential elections, losing in 2003, 2007 and 2011. He finally won when he contested a 4th time in 2015.
A court in the UK has ruled that a newborn baby allegedly trafficked from Nigeria last year will now be adopted in Britain. The BBC's Sanshia Berg has this report.
On the 6th of July last year, police arrested a Nigerian woman on suspicion of trafficking as she arrived at Gatwick Airport with a baby girl after a month in her home country. The woman lives in the UK with her family. She had told English doctors she was pregnant, but scans and tests before her trip showed that wasn't true. She presented Leeds Family Court with photos and videos that she said proved she'd given birth. The judge found those had been faked. Phone messages suggested she had bought the baby. The little girl was taken into foster care on arrival in Britain, and a judge has decided she will now be adopted here.
In southern Africa, the SADC Public Service Commissioners Forum is underway in Windhoek in Namibia. And this meeting is focused on improving regional cooperation in public service delivery, with discussions there centered around recruitment standards, digital transformation, and the adoption of the forum's draft constitution.
So the work that faces us, and the first prize, is simply to make sure that we collaborate as the oversight and accountability bodies of public service in order to improve our efficiency and our effectiveness, in order to upscale our uptake of technologies which are being used to improve effectiveness.
The world's largest cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, is trading at more than $120,000 for the first time. The milestone reflects a rise in investor confidence in cryptocurrencies since President Trump returned to the White House in the U.S. Here's the BBC's Katie Silver.
Donald Trump has called himself the crypto president. He created his own crypto meme coin, as did his wife Melania, and he pledged to create a Bitcoin sovereign reserve owned by the US government. It's driven investor confidence in cryptocurrencies since the start of the year, when Donald Trump started his second term. Bitcoin is up almost 30%. On Monday, the US House of Representatives will start debating a series of bills to regulate the digital asset industry, dubbing it their Crypto Week.
That's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Africa Roundup. Coming up, we zoom into the East Africa region of our continent, looking at some stories making headlines there. Peter will be in conversation with a journalist and team head at Grassroots Journalism Kenya, Dennis Beru. Stay tuned for that.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix. Anaitwa Daniel Etienne Benson. Huyu alizaliwa mwaka 1997, ilikuwa Mei 14, na anajulikana kitaalamu kabisa kwa jina la muziki BNXN. Haya, ni mwanamuziki huyo, ni mwimbaji kutoka nchini Nigeria, mtunzi wa nyimbo na mtayarishaji wa record label. Ameshirikiana na Rema kwenye wimbo huu. Rema vile vile ni msanii kutoka huko nchini Nigeria. Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So, as East Africa continues to make global headlines, the region is grappling with a complex mix of political tension, grassroots activism, regional diplomacy, and public health milestones. And to help us unpack some of these issues, we're now joined by Dennis Beru, who's a journalist and team head of Grassroots Journalism in Kenya. Jambo, Dennis, habari yako? Hello, Dennis, are you there?
Asante sana. I hope you are doing well in South Africa.
No, we're doing very well indeed. Dennis, let's begin in your country. The country has witnessed widespread protests and now the tragic death of a 24-year-old activist, Julia Kariuki, in police custody. What more do we know about this, these circumstances around her death and how the public has responded?
Thank you so much, Peter Ndoro. Of course, the death of Julia Njoki, a 24-year-old Gen Z who was part of the protest during the Sabasaba, has really brought outrage in this country. And Njoki's death comes at a time when the country is still, young people are still looking for answers to the death of a blogger and a teacher, Albert Ojwang, who was laid to rest 2 weeks ago. Julia was arrested on Monday during the Sabasaba protest, and he was taken to Nanyuki police station, and later on, that was on the 8th of July, she was taken to Lokosa, where she was charged, and she was supposed to be released on a cash bail of 50,000. But because the family was not in a position to raise that amount of money, she was taken back to the police station. And according to the auntie, Njoki was beaten by the police officers in a police station, and she was left unconscious. And this is the reason why the young girl lost her life. She was taken to hospital, but according to the relatives, the police didn't want to get the medical attention, and this resulted to her death. And the death has actually, we have seen protests all over the county. That was yesterday. Young people are still rioting. They are seeking answers from the police officers who are on duty and the OCS of the police station. And they are still agitated, saying that they will still go to the streets to seek for justice for this young lady who was just only on the streets protesting during the Sabasaba.
What have senior police officials said, and has government commented at all on this latest death? Because there's a pattern that's been developing over a period of time now that's coming to the fore.
Of course, during the protest yesterday in the county where she died, the government police spokesman said that there are no records for this case. No one has come forward to record statement for the death of Julia and Njoki. And IPOA, that is the Independent Police Oversight Authority, they have now stepped into this matter, and we look forward to, of course, more of the police officers who had the duty during the time the lady died, being arrested or summoned, because after what we saw with the Albert Ojwang's death, when IPOA came in, we saw the police officer arrested, and also the Deputy Inspector of Police stepping aside. So we might also see the same happening to this case of Julia Njoki.
Still in Kenya, there's another battle that's playing out, and this time in the agricultural sector, I believe. Farmers pushing back against what they see as restrictions on seed sovereignty. What's at the heart of this issue, and how are small-scale farmers organizing themselves?
Very interesting, Peter Ndoro, because agriculture is a very is the backbone of our economy here in Kenya, and young women from marginalized regions, a town of Marigat, that is in the western part of Kenya, they want to preserve the past and also planting for the future. And this is just to revive the traditional maize seeds. And it is a revolution. They all say it is eco-friendly in agriculture, and they are using wood ash to protect maize seeds from pests and molds. They're also reviving the traditional farming methods that had nearly vanished. And the small householders, farmers are not only preserving the rare maize varieties such as the yellow and red corn, but they are also building a community around the food sovereignty. The initiative includes a self-built seed banks that stores the seed from more than 20 resilient plant varieties adapted to arid climate. I remember we are seeing the change in climate change that has been happening all over the world, and now they are trying to go back to the traditional ways of planting and storing seeds. And we might see other women and other farmers across the country now using the same model, because this is a model that was used during our grandparents, but they're now trying to bring it back, because now we've seen what has been happening with the GMO and the change in climate, because if you look at our country, Kenya, we never receive rain the way we used to receive in the past.
All right, let's turn our attention to the escalating tensions between Ethiopia and Somalia. Talks over the controversial port deal with Somaliland appear to have stalled. How has this affected relations between Mogadishu and Addis Ababa?
Thank you so much. Of course, the president of Turkey, that is Recep Tayyip Erdogan, has now stepped into this issue because this is an escalation, the tension between these two countries, Ethiopia and Somalia. And the talks between President Erdogan and Somalia's president on Friday, Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, in the capital, Turkey. Of course, according to the statement released by the Turkish communication directorate, the meeting comes at the moment, the tension between these two countries. And we have seen the mediation efforts over controversial port access agreement that's stalled. And the talks that are now currently or that took place from the month of February 2024 was aimed to resolve the dispute triggered by a deal signed in January 2024 between Ethiopia and self-declared Republic of Somaliland. And remember, Mahmoud, the president of Somalia, feels that, Somaliland has not yet gotten its independence. And we've actually seen Ethiopia gain access to over a 20-kilometer stretch of Somaliland's coastline. And in exchange, Somaliland will also receive a support for its long-term sought international recognition, which Somalia considers as a part of its territory, and they strongly condemn and oppose the deal, calling it a violation of its sovereignty. So, because Erdogan has stepped in, let's see whether these talks will yield any fruits between the two countries that has had issues for the longest time.
Uganda has reopened a key border crossing with the eastern DRC, including areas controlled by M23 rebel group. What's the justification from the Ugandan side, and how's this being received in Kinshasa?
Of course, the border, Uganda and the eastern part of Congo, that is the Kivu and the capital of the eastern, that is Goma. This comes at a time when the M23 and the Congolese army peace deal was signed in Washington, where Rwanda and DR Congo committed to supporting the future talks between the rebels, M23 and the Congolese army. I remember the M23 group, which composed of the largely ethnic Tutsi, resumed its offensive in the late 2021. Fighting has intensified since then the group capturing the large area of the eastern Congo, including Goma. And according to the Uganda military assistant, that is Chris Magezi, confirmed the reopening through the social media, stating that the move was made under the directive of President Yoweri Museveni. Remember, the dispute has been there since then. And remember, the last time we saw the closure of the border was in 2012 after M23 launched an offensive in eastern DR Congo, prompting Uganda to shut down the Bunagana crossing for security reason. And it was later reopened after attention eased. So Uganda closing the border again in 2024, the Bunagana and Ishasha after the renewed M23 advances near Goma. So the 6-month closure now comes to an end, and we might see also the flow of business between the two countries, having in mind that the peace deal was signing in Washington, D.C., and the two countries, Uganda now being the third party in this conflict, must also honor that peace act.
All right, on a more positive note, the World Health Organization has declared Burundi free of trachoma, a major public health achievement, one would imagine. What does this milestone mean for the country and the region more broadly?
Peter Ndoro, it is now officially Burundi is free from trachoma, and this is the 8th country in Africa, according to the World Health Organization. And remember, eliminating this NTD is a major milestone for these one of the poorest countries in the world, that's Burundi. And according to the director of WHO, that is Tedros Ghebreyesus, in his congratulatory message, he congratulated the government of Burundi for their hard work and ensuring that actually this disease is no longer in Burundi. I remember people might be wondering what is a trachoma. Trachoma is a bacterium, chlamydia trachomatis, that is spread through the personal contact contaminated surfaces and the flies. And also the repeated infection can also lead to scarring and also inward turning eyelid and also and ultimately blindness. The disease continues to affect some of the world's most vulnerable population, especially where access to clean water and sanitation is limited. And remember, sometimes back, Burundi had an issue of access to fresh water and also things around sanitation. And remember, in 2007, Burundi had no official data on trachoma. That changed when the government launched a nationwide initiative to tackle NTD, mapping the prevalence of Beda diseases that also included trachoma. Also, the survey that was conducted between 2009 and 2010 confirmed that trachoma was endemic and in part of the country, prompting swift action. And of course, in 2025, it is a milestone for Burundi because trachoma has been eliminated.
And such a good story to end our conversation on. As always, thank you so much indeed for such a comprehensive update. My dear brother, Dennis, have a good day.
Have a good day too. See you next week.
Thank you. That's Dennis Beru, journalist and team head of grassroots journalism in Kenya with today's East Africa Roundup. It's 6:30, which means it's time for your news headlines. Here's Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Nigeria's government has declared today a public holiday to honor former President Muhammadu Buhari, who died at the age of 82 in a London clinic on Sunday after battling ill health for years. Volunteer aid workers in Sudan say the paramilitary rapid support forces have been expelling patients from hospital in West Kordofan state so their wounded fighters can be treated. And U.S. President Donald Trump has again confirmed that billions of dollars worth of weapons will be sent to Ukraine. Trump has also threatened Russia and its trading partners with tariffs if there is no peace deal soon. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's get our full sports news update for this Tuesday, the 15th of July, as we say good morning to Musibudi Makura with our sports news.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning from the sports desk. We'll start with what happened overnight. So Total Energies CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations reigning champions. South Africa produced a dominant display to brush aside Mali by 4-0, as well as seal top spot in Group C, securing their place in the knockout stages of this year's competition in style. So Banyana started brightly and wasted no time in asserting their authority last night. Just 5 minutes in, Lebohang Ramalebe opened the scoring with a composed right-footed finish into the top corner, setting, of course, the tone of what would be a long afternoon for the Malian side. Now, South Africa's superiority was quite evident, not just in the scoreline, but also in their organisation, creativity, as well as relentless pressure. That result sees South Africa finish top of Group C, advancing confidently to the knockout stages as they continue their pursuit of continental glory. So we can confirm that the quarterfinal lineup has been confirmed. So the teams that have qualified for the quarterfinals are the host nation Morocco, Zambia, Senegal, Nigeria, Algeria, South Africa, Ghana, as well as Mali. So following an intense as well as a gripping group stage, the tournament now moves to the quarterfinal stages, starting officially this coming Friday with a coveted place in the semi-finals up for grabs. So we'll start on Friday with the 9-time champions Nigeria, the most successful team in the history of the competition, facing off with the 2022 bronze medalist Zambia. That match will be played at the Labri Zawule Stadium in Casablanca. And by the way, it's a repeat of the third and fourth place playoff match that was played back in 2022. Also on Friday, we'll get to see the host nation Morocco facing off with Mali at the Stade Olympique Stadium in the city of Rabat. Then the action will then continue on Saturday. Algeria, the surprise package of this year's competition, up against the Ghana Black Queens at the Bagan Stadium in the city of Bagan. And then the defending champion South Africa will face off with the Taranga Lionesses of Senegal at the Stade de Hojne in the city of Uja for a place in the semi-finals of this competition. Further field now, Luka Modric has completed a move to AC Milan on a free transfer after 13 successful years at Real Madrid. The 39-year-old midfielder has signed a contract until June of 2026, with the Italian side also having the option to trigger a one-year extension. So Modric announced back in May he would be leaving Spanish giants Real after the FIFA Club World Cup in the USA. Speaking to Milan's social media, he said he was quite happy to be starting a new chapter of his career. Meanwhile, Massimiliano Allegri, who has also returned for his second stint as AC Milan boss after replacing Sergio Conceição, called Modric an extraordinary player when confirming the Croatian captain would join earlier this month. Modric, who won the Ballon d'Or award back in 2018, won 28 trophies, including 6 Champions League as well as 4 La Liga titles, with Real also after his move to Tottenham Hotspur back in 2012, also making him the club's most decorated player. He also went on to score 43 goals in 597 games at Real, and his final match was in that 4-0 semi-final defeat by Paris Saint-Germain at the FIFA Club World Cup just last week. On to some netball news now. South Africa's under-19 netball team coach Emily Matosa is proud to lead the team to their Region 5 game trophy in succession. Now, this after South Africa Mali 37-32 in that win to defend their championship at the Windhoek Showgrounds in Namibia this past weekend. Matosa says this is a testament to South Africa, currently, of course, being the leading African nation in netball on the continent.
It really shows that we are the best in Africa, and I'm very proud that I was part of it from 2021. I was the coach from 2021 until now. So I am glad that in these 3 times I was able to lift the trophy as a coach. So it shows that we have a nice group of girls. Every year, every time when we go to compete, it's different team, different girls. So, and I believe that these girls are willing. They want to represent the country very well in Africa.
By the way, South Africa maintained a consistent performance in this year's edition, winning 5 out of 5 matches, also opening the competition with a 53-38 win over Zambia. That was then followed by a 92-14 win over Eswatini, and then also securing a 48-29 win over Malawi in the quarterfinals, followed by a 60-26 win against Namibia in the semi-finals. This is what Matosa had to say as she reflects on her team's performance.
It shows that we have a nice group of girls. every year, every time when we go to compete, it's different team, different girls. So, and I believe that these girls are willing. They want to represent the country very well in Africa. We're getting it right by the resources that we have in South Africa, because of the girls have been in many events. They train at schools, they play tournaments. So the more game time they get, the more they grow in the game. So I'm glad that we were able to actually win the trophy again back home.
Right, so that's a wrap of your sports news on the first hour of Africa Rise and Shine. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email. That's to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. Enjoy the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. The rhythm of Africa, the pulse of the continent. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It's time for our first look at what's been happening in the world of business, economics, and commerce. And at the desk this morning is Buntle Headbush. Good morning to you, Buntle.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Good morning, Peter, and a very good morning to our listeners. At our first look at the business news this morning, Mozambique has created the necessary conditions for the resumption of Total Energies' $20 billion liquefied natural gas project in that country. Total Energies, which halted construction in 2021 after an Islamic State-linked insurgency attack threatened its Afungi site in the north of Mozambique, says it wants to resume development this summer. Total Energy CEO Patrick Puyan met with Mozambique President Daniel Chapo to discuss restarting activities after security interventions helped reduce but not entirely eradicate insurgent attacks around its base. Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, says that it's important for Africa to position itself with strength and determination. He spoke at the 7th Mid-Year Coordination Meeting in Malabo, capital of Equatorial Guinea, on Sunday. Under the theme of Justice for African People through Reparations, the conference discussed various issues, including the regional integration process in the continent. Yusuf also encouraged the further utilization of natural minerals.
Le marché unique africain et à terme, we have to show how much Africa weighs on this international scene. For example, Africa has more than 50% of the reserves of manganese and other minerals. These are strategic minerals. And if we commit ourselves to transform these raw materials like copper and other minerals in Africa, I think Africa would be the driving force of world growth, according to many experts.
L'Afrique deviendra. Talks with the South African government have so far yielded little progress to avert the closure of loss-making long steel operations at ArcelorMittal, South Africa. In November 2023, the South African unit of world number 2 steelmaker ArcelorMittal SA initially announced plans of closing the two plants, citing weak domestic demand, high electricity tariffs, poor freight logistics and competition from local scrap metal recycling mini meals and imports from China. In a trading update, the company said limited progress has been made to date in redressing the major structural impediments, adding that the closure can no longer be postponed beyond the 30th of September unless a solution is found soon. Deputy Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, Rashad Kassim, says the G20 functions at its best in times of trouble. He was speaking on the sidelines of the G20 Finance Working Group meeting of senior officials at Zimbali on the KwaZulu-Natal North Coast yesterday. After this two-day meeting, G20 finance ministers and heads of central banks will meet at the end of the week. Kassim has highlighted the role of the G20 that it played during the 2009 financial crisis. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it was also a vehicle to decide on funding and the distribution of resources. Kassim says at the moment, the world is grappling with countries' debt problems as well as wars in Ukraine and in the Middle East.
The challenge we're going to face at this meeting is really have a conversation around the table to kind of assess what exactly is the source of imbalances in the global economy. Are there real concerns that some countries are more protectionist than others? So it's really about creating an environment where we can have a constructive conversation on the trade issues.
U.S. President Donald Trump has announced the imposition of secondary tariffs of 100% if Moscow does not agree to a ceasefire deal with Ukraine within 50 days. The tariff threat would target countries that trade with Russia, particularly in the oil, gas and uranium sectors. Trump was speaking alongside NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in the Oval Office, where he also confirmed that the United States would send weapons to NATO, including Patriot missile systems and batteries that would then be transferred to support Ukraine's defensive capabilities in its war with Russia.
I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there. So based on that, we're going to be doing secondary tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. It's very simple. And they'll be at 100%. And that's the way it is. That can be more simple. It's just the way it is. I hope we don't have to do it.
And now for our first look at the financial indicators this morning, $1 US in Nigeria is trading at 1,527 naira. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 20 Kenya. The dollar is trading at 128 shilling 54, and in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 16. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 56. Russia, 77 rubles 98. India, 85 rupees 89. In China, it's 7 yuan 16. And South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 90 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,358 per ounce this morning, and platinum at $1,408 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $68.88 a barrel. And those are your business news at this hour. I'll be back with more in the next hour. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Bontle Hetbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Yes, it's that time for our G20 fact for today. It's 6:45 Central African time. Did you know that the main element of the logo for South Africa's G20 presidency represents the King Protea, which holds a special place in the hearts of South Africans as the national flower of the country. It embodies resilience, cultural pride, hope, and natural splendor. The Protea logo is covered with the colors of the country's flag: green, gold, black, blue, red and white, representing the country's diverse heritage and cultural vibrancy. That's our G20 fact for this 15th of July this morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series all about South Africa's national rugby team, the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starting the 13th of July at 7:30 p.m. on SABC2. Tune in every Sunday for the highs and the heartache, as well as the heroics that made rugby history. And you can stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere, and no subscription is needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
All right, let's take a look at this story now, and it's quite a sad story actually. In South Africa, a landmark ruling has brought long-awaited justice to the family of Caiphus Nyoka, a student activist who was killed during the apartheid era. A court in Pretoria has sentenced Johan Murray, a former officer of the apartheid security police, to 15 years in prison for his role in Nyoka's murder. The killing took place in 1987 in Davidton, and that's a township east of Johannesburg, at a time when the apartheid regime used brutal tactics to silence political dissent. Murray is one of 3 former officers charged in the case. Whilst he pleaded guilty, his 2 co-accused maintained their innocence. The sentence marks another step in South Africa's ongoing efforts to reckon with its past and deliver justice for victims of apartheid-era crimes. Channel Africa's Tutongo Beni reports.
It's been 39 years since the killing of Caiphus Nyoka, a prominent student leader and an anti-apartheid activist in South Africa, in the East Rand, a major urban area in Gauteng province. Nyoka was killed by Johan Murray, who in 1987 held the rank of sergeant and fulfilled the role of section commander at Reaction Unit 6. Murray failed to apply to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission TRC for amnesty for the murder of Nyoka. The Promotion of National Unity and Reconciliation Act held at the time that apartheid-era crimes that were not amnestied by the TRC had to be investigated with the aim of prosecuting such crimes. Following a hearing before the TRC human rights violations committed on 5 February 1997, the TRC formally recognized Nyoka as a victim of gross human rights violations. The Nyoka family, along with the Foundation for Human Rights and Weber Wenzel Public Interest Law Department, have been in pursuit of justice for Nyoka. Foundation for Human Rights spokesperson Sesethu Holomisa says they welcome the sentencing of Murray to 15 years direct imprisonment.
The Foundation for Human Rights supports the Nyoka family's welcoming of the sentence of Murray for 15 years. We also agree that although this sentencing brings a sense of relief, we can't ignore that it's been delayed for the past 37 years. And that ultimately nothing will ever bring back Caiphus Nyoka, who was brutally killed. And while this justice is certainly delayed, we're glad to see that it hasn't been denied. And we hope that this path towards justice and accountability continues, especially with the upcoming trial of Murray's co-accused Vandenberg, Engelbrecht and Stander, which is set to resume in the Benoni Magistrates Court from September 8th to the 19th, 2025.
The perseverance of the Nyoka family, combined with the years of legal support and sustained advocacy by the FHR and Weber Wenzel, led to enactment being issued against Nyoka's killers in 2022 and 2024 respectively. On 12 November 2024, Marais family pleaded guilty and was convicted for murder. In a detailed judgment, Judge Mukini Muswapa reminded South Africans that apartheid and the inhumane acts resulting from the policies and practices of apartheid was a crime against humanity that caused serious harm not only to the Nyoka family but to the majority of South Africans who suffered under the draconian and racist laws and policies of the apartheid regime.
In a clinical psychologist report, you indicated you want to write a book about your life after completion of your trial matter, and the time has now arrived. You will use the time to write a book and fully detail your involvement in the killing of the deceased. Also use the time in your book to educate South Africans who are still living in the racist past to embrace democracy.
Algeria Nyoka is the sister of Keifas Nyoka.
As family, I think at long last we are relieved that it had come to this end for one of the killers of my brother who was killed in 1987. So the sentence of 15 years, we accept it. And though we have mixed feelings because my parents died without knowing this truth. So, but on their behalf, we accept that. And on behalf of my slain brother.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongo Bene in Johannesburg.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The wrongful death lawsuit to determine a civil penalty in the fatal police shooting of Lindani Myeni begins in Honolulu, Hawaii, in the USA today. The first order of business will be jury selection in a trial against the Honolulu City and Police Department. The civil lawsuit brought by Lindani's widow, Lindsay Myeni, alleges that police officers acted recklessly and without justification on the night they killed her South African-born 29-year-old husband on April 14, 2021. Sherwin Bryce Peace reports.
The civil procedure comes after the Honolulu City Council rejected a $1.5 million settlement in the wrongful lawsuit case last year. The decision to file suit came after the Honolulu prosecuting attorney found that the two officers who shot Lindani Myeni on that fateful night in April more than 4 years ago were justified in using deadly force, and that the officers would not face charges in the case. A council vote to settle the matter last year was cancelled, leading to the civil procedure seeking financial damages after the local prosecutor, Steve Alm, determined there was no criminal liability for the police officers who killed Myeni, arguing that Myeni was the aggressor and that he suffered from chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a degenerative brain disease that might explain his behavior on the night of his death.
In this case, they acted appropriately. So the officers' actions were justified during our investigation as self-defense, defense of others, and force used in law enforcement. Finally, there was zero evidence of racism. Playing the race card here is shibai. The officers did what they're supposed to do in a tough situation. I'm sorry Mr. Myeni passed away. I think CTE is a big part of it.
Myeni attorney Jim Bickerton told SABC News last year that they believed they would prevail at a jury trial and anticipated the damages would be much higher than the initial settlement the council rejected. This from an interview with Bickerton in April 2022.
A civil lawsuit can't result in anyone going to prison, but it can do two things. The first thing, and I think probably the most important from the family's perspective, is to shine the light of truth on the situation and bring forward all the evidence and show who's being truthful and candid and honest about things and who's not, and in that process have some accountability. The second thing it does, and it's really very important, although it's a little more mundane, is that it is designed to seek compensation. And you know, the way that we look at it is Lindsay and her family and Lindani, they've already paid. So compensation is to try to put them back a little bit of what was taken.
Get on the ground! Get on the ground now!
The lawsuit argues that the officers who encountered Mieni on that fateful night did not identify themselves as police and were motivated by race.
I still believe that, and I haven't seen any reason not to. I believe that it's a subtle form of racial discrimination. I don't feel it's like, oh, here's a black man, let's shoot him. It's much more like, here's a black man, we don't need to give him the dignity of announcing ourselves. In other words, we can treat him in a lesser way than we might treat someone else. If it was someone else, they might have said, sir, freeze, we're police.
Yeah.
But because they see a black man, they say, get on the ground without further ado.
Police officers shot the former rugby player 4 times when he emerged from a vacation rental property adjacent to a Hindu temple. The civil complaint explains that it's not known whether Mieni intended to inquire about the rental or whether he mistakenly thought he was visiting the temple next door. Despite behaving and departing peacefully, the occupants of the rental frantically called police, who encountered Mieni as he was departing the property, leading to a physical altercation and his subsequent death. I'm Sherwin Bryce Pease in New York.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
The Electoral Commission in South Africa is expected to present a report on the 2024 general elections to Parliament this morning. The report will detail the Commission's achievements in relation to managing the polls, including successfully integrating independent candidates into contesting national and provincial elections. Busi Bopela filed this report.
In its report, the IEC says it was able to make the smooth transition necessitated by a new electoral system which saw independent candidates contest general elections for the first time. Amongst the changes it was required to make were the rewriting of the ICT business applications, including the candidate nomination system and the results system, amongst others. With 70 political parties contesting alongside 11 independent candidates, the intensity of competition was unprecedented. In this environment, the IEC unsurprisingly faced numerous court challenges in the run-up and after elections, which included intra-party disputes, candidate nominations, and challenges to electoral legislation. The IEC has detailed the problems it faced, amongst them difficulties with its information systems. One incident dramatically saw a blackout of the results leaderboard, and voter management devices let the IEC down at various voting stations on election day. It says while effort was spent in creating awareness of Section 24A, which required registered voters to give notice if they were voting outside their voting district, evidence on the ground showed much more needed to be done. Busibo Pela, SABC News.
Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa.
It is 7 o'clock Central Africa time, which means it's time for the second hour of Africa Rise and Shine, right here on Channel Africa, where we bring you the African perspective, streaming live on www.channelafrica.co.za, and you can also access us on the mobile app SABC Plus. I'm Peter Ndoro. Good morning.
My name is Asanda, Beda. In this hour, we look at South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa's announcement of a judicial commission of inquiry into corruption within South Africa's law enforcement agencies. Also in the country, Amnesty International having criticized the President Ramaphosa's decision to launch that very same judicial commission into those allegations of corruption. Those stories and more coming up. Let's get our news first. Here's Onele Nsinzi. Then Musibudi Makura will follow with news headlines sports-wise.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Nigeria's government has declared today a public holiday to honor the former President Muhammadu Buhari, who died at the age of 82 in a London clinic on Sunday after battling ill health for years. Katsina State Governor Diko Rada, who returned to Nigeria after being with Buhari's family in the British capital, said the funeral, initially expected yesterday, had been delayed due to logistical reasons. The Vice President said Buhari had died after a brief illness without revealing any further details. Even though he is a former president, there will not be a state funeral. In line with Islamic teachings, Islamic cleric Abdullahi Garagwamawa said Buhari will be buried as quickly as possible in a simple ceremony. Volunteer aid workers in Sudan say the paramilitary rapid support forces have been expelling patients from hospitals in West Kordofan state so their wounded fighters can be treated. They say some patients are being bitten by the RSF fighters. The reports follow battles over the weekend in the town of Sumeima, with both the Sudanese army and the RSF saying they now control. There's also been intense fighting around El Fasher in Western Darfur region. 92-year-old Cameroon President Paul Biya has declared that this year's presidential elections will take place on the 12th of October. Biya, who is seeking a new term that could keep him in office until he is nearly 100 years, came to power more than 4 decades ago in 1982, when his predecessor, Amadou Ahidjo, resigned. These are some of the views that Cameroonians following Biya's announcement of his plan to seek an 8th term.
I want to say I detest the idea of Mr. Biya coming in as president of Cameroon. My reason being that I am 39 years old today. I've been hearing the same president's name. Now, my son is 9 years plus, and he is already hearing the same president as president of Cameroon. I think that he should give way so that a new system can be installed.
At the age of 92 years, he should not be thinking of running again as president. It is not at the age of above 90 years that a person like him will be thinking of a new mandate.
I am not in for the support that an old man of his age should be leading a country like Cameroon, where more than 3/4 of the population is below 50 years old. Does it mean that even in the ruling party, there is nobody who can help this grandpa to go and rest?
Judicial watchdog Judges Matter in South Africa has expressed concern about what it calls a trend of commissions of inquiry functioning like trials, which it says prolong the investigation process. The remarks come in light of the establishment of a commission of inquiry investigating allegations of criminal syndicates infiltrating institutions within the criminal justice system. This follows claims made by the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner, Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, who alleged collusions between the judiciary and criminal organizations, amongst other issues. Mbegezeli Benjamin is from Judges Matter.
A commission of inquiry should not be a trial. It should be an inquiry into the facts, and those facts should be handed over to the relevant authority to take concrete action. Unfortunately, what we've seen in recent times is commissions of inquiry have turned into trials in and of themselves, and that's what elongates them or drags them much longer than they should be.
Lastly, US President Donald Trump has again confirmed that billions of dollars worth of weapons will be sent to Ukraine. He says this will be done in an operation that other members of NATO alliance will fund. Trump has also threatened Russia and its trading partners with tariffs if there is no peace deal soon. He was speaking at the White House.
We are very unhappy, I am, with Russia, and we're going to be doing very severe tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. Tariffs at about 100%. You'd call them secondary tariffs. You know what that means.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News. I am Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, so the WAFCON quarterfinal lineup has been confirmed with the actions to underway this Friday, while Ben Stokes once again inspired England to a 22-run win over a stubborn Indian side on a tense and a final day of the third test at Lord's. Details at 7:30.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
We welcome your views in terms of this particular topic. Cameroon's President Paul Biya, who is 92, wanting to run for another term in office. And then in Uganda, 81-year-old President Yoweri Museveni seeking another presidential term. We just heard those stories in the news. Africa continuing to witness several leaders holding on to power for extended periods is what we're looking at. What do you think that is the question? Share your thoughts via our social media platforms of X, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. At Channel Africa 1 is our handle. We'd love to hear from you.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Let's come to South Africa now, though, where President Cyril Ramaphosa's announcement of a judicial commission of inquiry into corruption within South Africa's law enforcement agencies has stirred both relief and frustration. Corruption Watch, which has long advocated for such an inquiry, says the announcement is long overdue. For more on this, we're joined by Mzwandile Banjatwa, campaign coordinator at Corruption Watch. Mzwandile, thanks for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
So, Corruption Watch has described the announcement of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry as being way overdue. What do you believe accounts for the delay, especially given that your organization raised the alarm as far back as 2019?
Well, I think it's very difficult for us to exactly pinpoint the specific reason for this failure for political leaders to take take action, and also to act on the evidence that have been brought to them, and maybe start investigations on them before the inquiry even starts. But I think the commission of inquiry into these allegations is very important, because you also need to broaden the scope, not just to limit it to the allegations that have been brought forward. There is serious rot within the SAPS, and this is exactly what we had brought to the commission of the Zondo Commission back in 2019, highlighting the extent of corruption and the infiltration of the SAPS. And this was a joint submission that we had done with the Institute for Security Studies, which it actually highlighted in actual fact the compromise within the criminal justice system, and we've also highlighted the clear signs of political interference and the impact that had on the overall running of the criminal justice system.
Let's talk about that then. How has this impacted that running of the criminal law system, and the failure to act on the allegations in terms of how they impact South Africa's ability to tackle organized crime and also maintain public trust?
Sure, I think it has compromised public trust pretty greatly. On a basic scale, people would prefer not to even go and lay criminal charges at their local police station, because they don't even trust the police officers. We're seeing more and more people take the law into their hands and acting up, and we're seeing more and more. Some might even call vigilante groups, but these would be organized members of the public who are taking the law into their own hands. But also, this means that people don't even have faith to a certain extent in the exact judiciary. Even when matters are enrolled in court, people tend to won't have as much faith. So this is a very huge problem that we are seeing. But among some of the things that we had done and that we had proposed in the submission that we had made back in 2019 was that it would be very important for us to have an overall reform of the senior managements within the criminal justice agencies and establish and also other establishments which also work there. But it's very important to have a very good and strong panel that will deal with the selection and appointment of key officials. And it's also very important to then start building organizational culture within these institutions of accountability and commitment to the rule of law, and strengthen anti-corruption investigation and prosecution capacity of the criminal justice system generally. But it's very important as well to have accountability of SAPS's criminal intelligence divisions, which seems to have lost to a certain extent, credibility in the public.
And on that, you've called for public hearings and regular reporting intervals. How important will that be to transparency and the legitimacy of this commission's work?
No, that's very important, but also important is that people need to see the inquiry televised, like the Zonda Commission. It's very important for transparency and people to understand the extent of corruption that is happening and how widespread it is, but also to encourage other would-be whistleblowers to come forward and give necessary information that may assist the inquiry in its work.
Your other statements have alluded to that, highlighting the need for a meaningful protection of whistleblowers. What specific safeguards would you like to see implemented during the inquiry?
Well, this is an inquiry like no other. It's focused on the criminal justice cluster. So it's very important for whistleblowers to be protected in this particular instant. It's very important to start seeing all these mechanisms that have been put in place previously from the Zonda Commission and coming into the state security. It's very important for us to start seeing how the state capacity is in protecting whistleblowers, because you have a lot of people who want to come and give information that may assist the commission, but if they do not feel protected, they won't come and give that information that would assist the commission. So it's very important to have very strong safeguards to protect whistleblowers, encourage them to come forward.
As Corruption Watch, you've also welcomed the appointment of Professor Firoz Kashalia as Acting Minister of Police. What do you believe he brings to the role, and how should he approach this moment of crisis?
Well, as far as we know, Mr. Kashalia, he has previously served in the board of Corruption Watch in the past. He has extensive experience in governance and has extensive experience in the anti-corruption space. So the expectations are quite high, because this is someone who's coming from the outside, who's always been advocating for transparency and accountability within government, especially the SAPS. So the expectations are quite high for him. He is, I would assume that he's been someone who has been following what has been happening in the country.
Zwandile, thanks for your time again. We'll leave it there for today.
Thank you very much.
Zwandile Banjatwa, campaign coordinator at Corruption Watch, discussing their views on the announcement of a judicial commission of inquiry into corruption within South Africa's law enforcement agencies.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mokoenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Allegations of deep-rooted corruption and political interference within South Africa's law enforcement agencies have prompted President Cyril Ramaphosa to announce a judicial commission of inquiry, but not everyone is convinced that this will lead to justice. Amnesty International South Africa has responded with concern, warning that unless the process is backed by swift and concrete action, it risks becoming yet another expensive exercise in political theatre with no consequences. The organisation stresses that public confidence in the justice system is already hanging by a thread. Well, joining us now on the line is Shanila Mohammed, who's the Executive Director of Amnesty International South Africa, to help us unpack the implications of this latest development and what accountability should really look like. Shanila, thanks so much indeed for joining us. Always good to talk to you.
Morning, Peter, and good morning to your viewers and listeners.
So let's start with your reaction to President Ramaphosa's decision to set up this commission. What concerns you the most about this move?
Well, Peter, I can't say we were surprised. I mean, this is exactly what the president does. But I think the biggest concern we have is yet again another commission that is going to cost millions, if not billions. I mean, Zondo cost the country billions. And yet we never see any action. There have been no top-level prosecutions. There has been no real follow-up. We saw that with Marikana. We saw that with Zondo. It's like a cycle that continues. And our worry is that as time goes by, things are going to worsen. We already have a horrendous crime situation in the country, and criminal syndicates are going to take more and more hold of the country, and people will start taking the law into their own hands, which they've already done, as we've seen time and time again in South Africa.
As Amnesty International, your statement mentions the urgency of lives at risk. Could you explain how failures within law enforcement are putting lives in danger?
Well, Peter, we have been following and documenting cases of human rights defenders, Abashlali, Mamfikile Chanje, who was an activist, an environmental activist, and these people were assassinated. Many Abashlali, which is the Slum Dwellers Association, talks about at least 26 of their members who have been assassinated in recent years, and yet there have been, I think, just one prosecution in all of this time. Now, the problem that we're facing is the president in his speech on Sunday did not make any mention about the political assassinations task team that General Mkhwanazi very clearly stated had been deliberately disbanded. We would have liked to see the president at least give us some reassurances that some of those systems and those task teams that were put into place in order to investigate these high-level killings or these killings of human rights defenders would still be continuing. And yet we are left with more questions than answers after the president spoke. So we are still wondering, is the task team in place? Will they continue with their investigations? We saw after Marikana, very few prosecutions took place. Very few of the recommendations were followed. And so, what we're saying is that innocent South Africans are dying. Women are dying on a daily basis with high levels of violence. And yet, one of the things that the police are really terrible at doing is gathering forensic evidence at a scene of a crime. So therefore, what happens is that the dockets go to the NPA. They cannot be prosecuted. Now, SAPS already has problems. There were already problems in SAPS without this high level of corruption that is adding to the lack of skills that exists within SAPS.
So what practical steps should the president take right now to start restoring public trust and ensure justice, in your view?
Well, I think, the problem with setting up a commission and then just stepping aside, which is what he's done all the time, is that people know from past experience that even if he says 3 months, 6 months, we're not sure we're even going to get those reports. Zondo Commission went on and on and on. I think the president could have looked at the evidence or appointed the NPA to look at the existing evidence that General Mkhwanazi and see whether or not there were cases that could have immediately been prosecuted. I think that he was very quick to dismiss the DA deputy minister, but I'm pretty, we don't know. Obviously, the evidence has to be tested, but, perhaps there was a way where the Minister of Police could have been fired rather than suspended. I do understand due process, but I do think the president's lack of action, immediate action, is what is eroding the public's confidence in him as the president, as well as in the institutions. And just one final thing, Peter. I mean, you set up a commission, but the independent investigative unit of the police, which is IPID, was set up to investigate the police. And yet we're having to set up commission. So what it shows us is that the institutions, the judicial institutions in this country, are not functioning. They are eroded, and the president has to fix them. I mean, who else is going to?
As Amnesty International, have you had reason to believe that because the Provincial Police Commissioner Konazi pointed a finger at the judicial system itself, actually beyond the police and politicians. Have you, as Amnesty International, had reason to believe, see that the judiciary itself had been compromised?
Well, to be honest, Peter, we haven't investigated or looked at that. But if you recall, General Mkhwanazi pointed to one particular person that he said was in Gauteng, and I think that that makes it pretty easy for the president or the NPA or the investigating authorities to look at. But from our side, I cannot sit here and tell you that we know or don't know. We have not looked at this matter in depth, so we can't say that it's compromised. But I do think that South Africa has got amazing judges. We have amazing police people. There are people out there who really want to see the country work and flourish. But I think they're being hampered by a couple of people who are really hell bent on getting gains for corruption and other things. And I think, the problem we're facing as well, Peter, is that we have a political system in this country where it's all about political survival. I mean, we've seen that in Zimbabwe, we've seen that in other countries. So it always becomes about surviving the next election. And none of these politicians ever puts the rights of the people ahead of their surviving politics. And I think that is the in a way, the model in Africa that really is problematic, because it goes from one election to the other, and people get instrumentalized, people's rights are abused, people, don't get the basic rights that they're entitled to. And this is all about politics, power, and money.
Shanida, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very, very much indeed for giving us the view of Amnesty International South Africa on these developments. Thanks for your time. That was Shanida Mohammed, Executive Director of Amnesty International South Africa, sharing her organization's position on the newly appointed Commission of Inquiry into South Africa's law enforcement agencies, as well as the judiciary, I believe, and what needs to be done to ensure it leads to real change.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South African Social Security Agency, or SASSA CEO Themba Matlou, says that ongoing reviews have uncovered alarming cases of fraud and system abuse. Matlou says the agency's latest investigations targeting beneficiaries with undisclosed sources of income have already led to arrests of officials allegedly colluding with external syndicates. The review, which flagged over 200,000 beneficiaries, is part of SASSA's broader push to ensure only those who truly qualify receive support and to protect the integrity of the system. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe has more.
In an effort to crack down fraudulent activity, the South African Social Security Agency in April 2025 announced an ongoing scheduled payment delays to targeted social grants beneficiaries who need to visit local offices to confirm changes in their financial circumstances and update their personal details to address potential inclusion errors in the current social security system. This was done after the agency has collaborated with registered credit bureaus and approximately 210,000 social grant beneficiaries were flagged to be receiving income that was not truthfully disclosed. At the media briefing, SASSA CEO Themba Matlou affirmed that the law compels beneficiaries to update SASSA on any changes enacted to their profile.
Section 14, subsection 5 of Social Assistance Act requires beneficiaries to notify SASSA of any material change in their circumstances, including financial, marital, as soon as reasonably possible. This obligation is also stated in the approval letter each beneficiary received once we approved the grant.
He says the reviews help SASSA to identify any eventual discrepancies in the grant systems.
I must importantly mention that the review of social grants helps identify beneficiaries who may no longer qualify due to circumstances in their financial, medical, or legal circumstances and serve as a confirmation of life or existence, ensuring that grants are not paid out to deceased individuals or those who have relocated without updating their records with SASSA. More importantly, reviews allow SASSA to detect and prevent cases where individuals continue to receive grants despite being listed on the payroll systems of other entities.
Matlou also dismissed rumors out in the public suggesting that grants have been suspended.
SASSA would like to categorically state that no social grant payments have been suspended or halted. All approved grants remain valid and payments continue to be processed. Any beneficiary with an active and valid grant remain entitled to receive their payment.
On the sidelines of the briefing, I asked the CEO Matlou for more clarity on the findings coming out of the conducted reviews, and this was his response.
During our review process, we were able to find out some of the applications and the files that we cannot qualify, we cannot justify. As part of our review mechanism, you will find that some files, they don't have the necessary documentation. So that will then implies that there is fraudulent cases that are in there. And there are some instances where when we start to in preliminary investigation, we do find that there is some syndicate that is our people inside working with some of the people outside for them to be able to capture the grant. As a result, that's why we were able to arrest a few officials in Johannesburg local office. That was through the process of the review, where we were able to pick up that indeed there are cases where people would have infiltrated the system, but with the assistance of some of the SASSA officials.
Before any beneficiary is suspended, the agency sends notifications to suspected beneficiaries to approach SASSA for review, but many recipients turn the blind eye. Here is SASSA's executive manager responsible for grants administration, Brenton van Friede.
If clients do not come forward within a certain designated period, which is defined in the social assistance legislation, after we've notified them that they need to come forward for a review, then they would be suspended on the basis that they've not come forward for the review.
At the heart of this administrative complexity is the issue of disclosure of income, which many beneficiaries are reluctant to come forward, with underlying fears that their grants might be taken away. Fani Sethoga, who is SASSA's general manager in the grants administration, clarifies the matter.
In a nutshell, for normal social grants, what we are encouraging is we're encouraging people to disclose. So it's not about how much money is in that particular account. We want them to disclose so that we can test if what they've disclosed will allow them, one, to receive the full value of a grant, two, whether it will allow them to receive a partial amount. So I think that's very critical. So generally what we are seeing is people do not want to come forward to disclose their income in earnest because maybe there is 50,000 rent in an account or 100,000 rent in an account. It's not about what is the balance that you have in account. We want to see whether there is income flows, and those income flows, they are the ones that we want to be able to test them.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It's 7:30. It's time for your news headlines with Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Nigeria's government has declared today a public holiday to honor the former President Muhammadu Buhari, who died at the age of 82 in a London clinic on Sunday after battling ill health for years. 92-year-old Cameroon President Paul Biya has declared that this year's presidential elections will take place on the 12th of October. Biya is seeking a new term that could keep him in office until he is nearly 100 years. And the World Health Organization has warned that years of progress in childhood vaccination are at risk of being reversed due to increased conflict and the U.S. government's funding cuts. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's find out what's happening in the world of sports. Here's Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning once again from the Sports Desk. So the Total Energies CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations reigning champions South Africa produced yet another dominant display, this time to brush aside Mali by 4-0 and seal a top spot in Group C, securing their place to the knockout stages in style. Banyana started brightly and wasted no time in asserting their authority in last night's game. Just 5 minutes in, Lebogang Ramalepe opened the scoring with a composed right-footed finish into the top corner, setting the tone, of course, for what would be a long afternoon for the Malian defence. South Africa's superiority was quite evident, not just in the scoreline, but also in their organisation, creativity, as well as relentless pressure. That result sees South Africa finish top of Group C, advancing confidently to the knockout stages as they continue their pursuit for continental glory. Now, the 8 teams have now been confirmed for the quarterfinals of the ongoing Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament. They include the host nation Morocco, Zambia, Senegal, Nigeria, Algeria, South Africa, Ghana, as well as Mali. Now, following an intense as well as a gripping group stage, the tournament now moves into the knockout phase, starting officially this coming Friday, with a coveted place in the semi-finals at stake. First up will be Nigeria up against Zambia on Friday. They'll face off at the Labri Zaoule Stadium in the city of Casablanca. Then also on Friday, the host nation Morocco taking on Mali at the Stade Olympique in the city of Rabat. On Saturday, we'll get to see Algeria, the surprise packages at this year's tournament, up against the Ghana side at the Bakan Stadium in the city of Bakan, while South Africa will then host, or rather take on Senegal at the Stade d'Honneur in the city of Oja, with places, of course, in the semi-finals up for grabs. On to this now. Orlando Pirates head coach Leslam Wadu believes that his squad is starting to blend and understand what is needed by the technical team. Wadu was speaking just after watching his team held to a draw against the Cyprus champions Paphos FC. This was also Pirates' second international friendly match in the European pre-season tour in Spain after losing by 2-0 to Bolton Wanderers. Now, Wadu shares more details of what they are trying to achieve in this game.
Yes, of course, we have decided to change the plan because this team, you can say that it's one of the strongest team in Europe in terms of building, lot of rotation, and sometimes this team can put us in trouble. So we decided to play very high to prevent this team from building. It worked. I'm very happy about the plan, but we didn't only did this pressing. We only played, especially in the first half. We had the control, the possession, and we can see that our team step by step is getting better. They start to understand exactly the expectation of the coach.
Now, analysing the first 2 matches on tour, Wadu also says both games are helping them with the content they need as they continue, of course, to prepare for the new season. He also talks about the importance of reacting differently to results compared to how fans are handling it.
But the first game was very interesting in the contents. You know, of course, we conceded in the set pieces, but a lot of interesting things. And now, today it was only the continuity of the work that boys are doing, and step by step I know that this team will come stronger and stronger. I'm very confident about that.
And finally, in cricket news, Ben Stokes once again inspired England to a 22-run win over a stubborn Indian side on a tense final day of the third test at Lord's. Now, the captain delivered a monumental shift with the ball to claim 3 wickets. This is India were bowled out for 170 runs. In an epic conclusion, the host victory in their grasp until nerves were frayed out by the outstanding defiance of Ravindra Jadeja. Now chasing 193 runs, India were 112 for the loss of 8 wickets when Jadeja was joined by the number 10 Jasprit Bumrah. They were together for almost 22 overs until Stokes, who bowled tirelessly from the nursery end, drew Bumrah into a pull on mid-on. Now, Bumrah's contribution to a stand of 35-5 from just 54 balls. Still, Jadeja resisted, this time with the last man Mohammad Siraj. Now, Stokes refused to stop bowling. A delayed tea was taken with 30 required for India. Captain Stokes, of course, saying his bowling performance in England's final day win over India at the Lord's was one of the toughest of the dark places he's been to during the Test series. Now, Stokes was also named the player of the match for his all-round performance in a dramatic 22-run victory, including 2 wickets on the final day as the Tourists were bowled out for 170 runs. And that's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África, com Remo Samo e João Yabalá.
O surto da cólera em Angola tem causado grande preocupação, afetando já mais de metade das províncias do país. Simultaneamente, a Agência dos Estados Unidos para o Desenvolvimento Internacional, USAID, um dos maiores doadores mundiais de assistência humanitária, decidiu não priorizar os países com maior incidência de malária. Para discutirmos as causas do alastramento da cólera em Angola e os impactos dessa decisão da USAID, convidamos o Dr. Jeremias Agostinho, médico e mestre em saúde pública, para partilhar a sua visão sobre o tema.
A doença, nesse momento, representa o maior risco de saúde pública que nós temos. Nos últimos anos, a nossa preocupação esteve sempre centrado com os casos de malária, os casos de tuberculose e também de infecção por VIH-Sida. A forma como, em pouco menos de 2 meses, os casos de cólera vêm aumentando, acaba por representar, nessa altura, um dos maiores desafios que o país tem. É expectável que, nesta fase, o número de casos venha a aumentar.
De segunda a sexta-feira, das 20 às 21 horas locais, este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
Right, let's catch you up with some business news. Good morning once again to Uuntil Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Peter. Good morning. And our top business story at this hour, Mozambique has created the necessary conditions for the resumption of Total Energies' $20 billion liquefied natural gas project in the country. Total Energies, which halted construction in 2021 after an Islamic State-linked insurgency attack threatened its Afungi site in the north of Mozambique, says it wants to resume development this summer. Total Energy CEO Patrick Puyan met with Mozambique President Daniel Chapo to discuss restarting activities after security interventions helped reduce but not entirely eradicate insurgent attacks around its base. Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, says that it's important for Africa to position itself with strength and determination. He spoke at the 7th Mid-Year Coordination Meeting in Malabo, capital of Equatorial Guinea, on Sunday. Under the theme of Justice for African People through Reparations, the conference discussed various issues, including the regional integration process in the continent. Yusuf also encouraged the further utilization of natural minerals.
Le marché unique africain et à terme.
We have to show how much Africa weighs on this international scene. For example, Africa has more than 50% of the reserves of manganese and other minerals. These are strategic minerals. And if we commit ourselves to transform these raw materials like copper and other minerals in Africa, I think Africa would be the driving force of world growth, according to many experts.
Talks with the South African government have so far yielded little progress to avert the closure of loss-making long steel operations at ArcelorMittal South Africa. In November 2023, the South African unit of world number 2 steelmaker ArcelorMittal SA initially announced plans of closing the two plants, citing weak domestic demand, high electricity tariffs, poor freight logistics and competition from local scrap metal recycling mini mills and imports from China. In a trading update, the company said limited progress has been made to date in redressing the major structural impediments, adding that the closure can no longer be postponed beyond the 30th of September unless a solution is found soon. Deputy Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, Rashad Kassim, says the G20 functions at its best in times of trouble. He was speaking on the sidelines of the G20 Finance Working Group meeting of senior officials at Zimbali on the KwaZulu-Natal North Coast yesterday. After this two-day meeting, G20 finance ministers and heads of central banks will meet at the end of the week. Kassim has highlighted the role that the G20 played during the 2009 financial crisis. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it was also a vehicle to decide on funding and the distribution of resources. Kassim says at the moment, the world is grappling with countries' debt problems, as well as wars in Ukraine and the Middle East.
The challenge we're going to face at this meeting is really have a conversation around the table to kind of assess what exactly is the source of imbalances in the global economy. Are there real concerns that some countries are more protectionist than others? So it's really about creating an environment where we can have a constructive conversation on the trade issues.
US President Donald Trump has announced the imposition of secondary tariffs of 100% if Moscow does not agree to a ceasefire deal with Ukraine within 50 days. The tariff threat would target countries that trade with Russia, particularly in the oil, gas and uranium sectors. Trump was speaking alongside NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in the Oval Office, where he also confirmed that the United States would send weapons to NATO, including Patriot missile systems and batteries that would then be transferred to support Ukraine's defensive capabilities in its war with Russia.
I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there. So based on that, we're going to be doing secondary tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. It's very simple. And they'll be at 100%. And that's the way it is. That can be more simple. It's just the way it is. I hope we don't have to do it.
And now for a look at our indicators, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,527 naira. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 20. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 54. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 16. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 rial 56. Russia, 77 rubles 98. In India, it's 85 rupees 89. China, 7 yuan 16. And South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 90 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,358 and platinum at $1,408 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $68.88 a barrel. And those are your business news. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Hetbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
7:44 Central African Time. Let's take a look at this story now. South Africa's National Association of Automobile Manufacturers, or NAMSA, now the Automotive Business Council, has raised the alarm over escalating U.S. tariffs, warning that the 25% levy on vehicle exports, which took effect in April and is set to climb to 30% in August, could push South Africa's auto industry into a full-blown socio-economic crisis. The Eastern Cape's key automotive hubs, including East London, risk becoming ghost towns as production slows and jobs are threatened. Adding to the uncertainty, the future of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA, remains unclear. For more on the potential impact, we're joined now by NAMSA Chief Economist, Dr. Paulina Mamokgobo. Dr. Mamokgobo, thank you for joining us. How are you this morning?
I'm well, thanks. And how are you, Asanda? And good morning to your listeners.
We're good, thank you so much, and thanks for making time. What are the immediate risks facing automotive hubs like East London under this new tariff regime of the U.S.?
Thank you for the question, Asanda. So the interesting thing, just to paint a picture for the listeners as well, is the nature of the automotive industry in South Africa. Number one, it's important to acknowledge that it is a significantly export-led industry, meaning that of what we produce, 65% of that is actually channeled for the export market. So you can imagine when we talk about the immediate impact, the conversation then becomes that with these tariffs, especially in the US market, it means that when we are hit with such tariffs already, that means losing the potential access or competitiveness in that particular market. Now, you're asking the questions around especially these economic hubs. So the nature of the automotive industry in South Africa is that it is clustered in particular regions. So I'll give an example. In Gauteng, we would have 3 OEMs, Ford, Nissan, and BMW. In the Eastern Cape, we have VW, Isuzu, and we've got Mercedes-Benz, and then we've got the likes of Toyota and KZN. What this then does is that the clustered nature of this, we need to understand that these continue to anchor economic activities in those particular regions or those particular towns. So if we lose a market access in the US, for example, owing to these tariffs, this automatically will impact in terms of production, because our production is always linked to export. Like I said, we're an export-led industry. Now, there are ripple effects because it does not just hit production in terms of the OEMs, but it also impacts the value chain. That is suppliers that continue to supply to these OEMs, and of course, other economic activities that are trickled by the existence of these OEMs in those markets. So our concern is that loss of market access, then we will see the ripple effect domestically, and likely, like we said, and also in our press release, that we don't want to see these economic hubs in South Africa becoming ghost towns, because we have seen our OEMs actually anchoring those industries or those towns for the longest of time.
South Africa's automotive industry is the third largest contributor to the economy of the country after mining and financial services, and traditionally the leader in Africa. So is there reason to panic at this point? I know you mentioned that we are export reliant, but does it not mean that this is a strong enough industry to survive even with these tariffs?
So we have seen the resilience of our industry, and like you mentioned, we are the third largest contributor in terms of GDP. So the beauty of it is that we've got other markets that we continue to export to. So I'll give an example. In 2023, we were exporting to 148 markets, and we've been able to increase that in 2024 to an additional 155 markets. So meaning that we do have a broader footprint in terms of our export market. For example, whilst we are looking in the terms of the tariffs, the conversation around the US, our biggest export market is actually Europe. What we have seen then in terms of our figures, especially the first quarter of the year, is that while we were losing actually market share in the US, for example, our exports declined by 73%, but we have seen our export competitiveness being upheld by markets like Europe, where we continue to send over 250,000 vehicles per annum. So one of the things that we've seen as well is we've seen the African region also being another market that continues to take up vehicles that are actually manufactured in the South African base. So to answer your question directly is that not necessarily a reason to panic at the moment. Of course, we need to acknowledge that market diversification or finding new markets is not an overnight exercise. But what this then means is to say, how do we ensure that we continue to advocate at least for market access and competitiveness in those markets. Because the other interesting thing, Asanda, if I can mention, is that there continues to be increasing competition in the markets that we are already exporting to. So I'll give this example that when we are hit by tariffs by the US, we are not the only market that has been hit by those tariffs. So if we are pivoting to Europe, we must understand that other markets like Thailand, maybe Vietnam, that are also impacted by the tariffs, they will also say, where else do we pivot our production? So there's intensifying competition, and I think that's what continues to put pressure as well in terms of us domestically. But it is the broadness of our export market reach that also gives us comfort that we will continue to be resilient as well.
You mentioned ripple effects as far as it comes to components. So how much of an impact really will they be feeling, component manufacturers and logistics providers, as a result of those ripple effects?
Because these component manufacturers and logistics, they actually supply or contribute or are linked to the change in terms of our OEM production. Any impact in terms of production, be the reduction of volumes, etc., also impacts what orders they are able to continue getting from the OEMs, as an example. So the ripple effect includes that. Also the moving of outbound logistics. If we are being hit by tariffs, it means that our exports are impacted. So logistics, as an example as well, would be impacted because that speaks to the movement of goods as well, outbound and inbound. So those are the conversations that we continue to look at. And like I said, it's actually the catalytic nature of our industry goes even beyond just components and logistics as well, but it looks at all the other suppliers, be it suppliers that are doing the caterings, etc. That becomes part of the bigger conversation. But what we have seen as well is we've seen our OEMs being quite resilient and committed to the industrialization of this country. And we've seen that because they've continued to make growing investments as well. And they want to make sure that they are committed and they continue to anchor as well the competitiveness of this industry domestically. So yes, there will be that impact overall that is likely to shake us a bit, but it's important to also mention that we have seen and weathered harder storms before, and though we don't know how long this one would last, but we are quite confident and optimistic that we'll be able to weather it again. Thank you.
As we talk about the growth of investments, can South Africa, the way you see it and as the way things stand, succeed in export diversification into other markets, and how long would that take?
Definitely we can succeed. And I think I mentioned the importance that export diversification is not something that just happens overnight. But maybe when we look at how we have been competitive in terms of the automotive industry, AGOA has been a bilateral trade regime. We've got the EU Extended Partnership Agreement. We've got the AFCFTA, the Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is a potential market. And I think it's also in terms of how we are campaigning for market expansion in terms of those trade regimes that will enable us also to remain quite competitive. So one of the things that we continue to advocate for as NAMSA as well is that policy certainty, as an example, around new energy vehicles, because we realize that markets like Europe, that I said is our leading export market, continues to pivot into those markets. So that policy certainty that will enable our manufacturers to be able to produce and meet demand in those markets is what will enable us as well to secure existing markets. In terms of other additional markets, I mean, South Africa is a member of other economic blocs. Of course, what has made us competitive is preferential trade agreements. So with the likes of BRICS and other markets, we don't necessarily have, we have economic cooperation frameworks, not necessarily trade agreements. But what our government in conversation with them continues to do as well is to say, how do they explore conversations around economic agreements as well, or frameworks that can actually create that competitiveness or open market access as well into those markets so that we remain quite competitive. Because in the absence of enabling frameworks, of course, then the economics thereof become quite an uphill.
Dr. Mamukhobo, we appreciate your time again. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Paulina Mamukhobo is Chief Economist for the National Association of Automobile Manufacturers in South Africa, or NAMSA, now the Automotive Business Council.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Cameroon's 92-year-old president, Paul Biya, has ended weeks of speculation by announcing that he will contest the country's upcoming presidential election on Sunday, the 12th of October. If he wins, as many predict, he'll remain in power until the age of 100. Yeah, extending a rule that began more than 4 decades ago. The news has sparked strong reaction from ordinary Cameroonians, many of whom have hoped that the long-serving leader would finally step down. Our correspondent Moki Kinzeka took to the streets to hear what the people in Cameroon are saying about Biya's decision to run again. And just to let you know that after 8 o'clock we'll be broadening this conversation. Why do some African leaders hold on to power for so long, even when the public mood has clearly shifted?
I want to say I detest the idea of Mr. Biya coming in as president of Cameroon. My reason being that I am 39 years old today. I've been hearing the same president's name. Now, my son is 9 years plus, and he is already hearing the same president as president of Cameroon. I think that he should give way so that a new system can be installed. Maybe there can be change in Cameroon. When you see the crisis in the northwest and southwest region of Cameroon, you see that he may be the one influencing it because after all, he's already tired. An old man of about 90-something years is supposed to go and rest. We're not saying he go and die, he should go and rest. So I think that if a new blood can be instilled into the Cameroonian political atmosphere, we can search for a way forward. There's no development as far as road infrastructure is concerned. In Cameroon, you don't talk about roads. Forget about educational system. So I think Mr. Biya should not even stand as president of the Republic of Cameroon.
At the age of 92 years, he should not be thinking of running again as president. It is not at the age of above 90 years that a person like him will be thinking of a new mandate. What I think is that the system has become so antagonistic, anachronistic, to the extent that it is so difficult for any person or any potential leader, even within the CPDM party, that is the president's party, to even raise a voice on who should be the candidate for the CPDM. And I think that the opposition should take the bull by the horn and do everything possible to galvanize forces in order to counteract this very old and deadly regime in Cameroon. It is unacceptable. It is really an unbearable thing for a person of his age to be thinking of running again as president of the country when the country has so many vibrant young people capable of handling the position of head of state of republic.
I am not in for the support that an old man of his age should be leading a country like Cameroon, where more than 3/4 of the population is below 50 years old. Does it mean that even in the ruling party, there is nobody who can help this grandpa to go and rest? Is he the only leader? Does it mean that if he dies, Cameroon will die? For the past 40 years, we have been craving for a change, and this is the highest time that we want to see the change. We need a youthful president who can understand the daily problems that Cameroonians are having. At his age, I'm not even sure that Biya can even understand what is happening in his own house, talk less of understanding the entire nation. For the past 7 years, we have not even felt the president in us. The worst part of it is that the current regime controls virtually everything. When you read at the electoral code, you realize that it is the president of the republic that appoints directors of Elecam, which of course means that they cannot go against his will, because someone cannot appoint you and you do otherwise. So if the opposition is careful and they want to really push out Biya from government, the opposition should come to a coalition, bring out one single candidate and go into the polls with their full speed. Because if they keep on going the way they are, I don't see that the opposition is able to beat Biya.
Paul Biya at 92 should be having some good rest and not seeking re-election to hold the highest power for the next 7 years. I doubt if he will even be there till the election day, but it is really funny getting that Paul Biya has declared his candidacy and some youth are like jubilating, celebrating. It's a curse to this nation. Where did we go wrong? How can someone at 92 be running for re-election with nothing to write home like achievement or whatsoever? Yaoundé, Douala, the main cities, you see bad roads everywhere, you see potholes, dirt littered here and there, and he's seeking re-election. Let him step aside and give an opportunity for some young blood to step in. Let's see whether there can be some change, some hope for this nation.
That report by Moki Kinzeka in Cameroon on the streets there, where the people were busy sharing their thoughts on the president of Cameroon, Paul Biya, wanting to extend his stay in power.
8 o'clock Central African time now. Good morning to you if you've just joined us as Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa. We now enter the third and final hour of the show. And in this hour, we'll be looking at Africa witnessing several leaders holding on to power for extended periods. Why is this the case? This is actually also a question that we pose on our social media platforms. So please do go to @ChannelAfrica1 to share your views. I'm Asanda Beda.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. Here's the news with Onele Nsensi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The Nigerian government has declared today a public holiday to honor the former President Muhammadu Buhari, who died at the age of 82 in a London clinic on Sunday. This after battling ill health for years. Katsina State Governor Dika Rada, who returned to Nigeria after being with Buhari's family in the British capital, said the funeral, initially expected yesterday, had been delayed due to logistical reasons. The Vice President said that Buhari had died after a brief illness without revealing any further details. Even though he is a former president, there will not be a state funeral in line with Islamic teachings. Islamic cleric Abdullahi Karakwamawa said Buhari will be buried as quickly as possible in a simple ceremony. 92-year-old Cameroon President Paul Biya has declared that this year's presidential elections will take place on the 12th of October. Biya, who is seeking a new term that could keep him in office until he is nearly 100 years, came to power more than 4 decades ago in 1982, when his predecessor, Amadou Ahidjo, resigned. Here are some of the views from Cameroonians following Biya's announcement of his plans to seek an 8th term.
I want to say I detest the idea of Mr. Biya coming in as president of Cameroon. My reason being that I am 39 years old today. I've been hearing the same president's name. Now, my son is 9 years plus, and he is already hearing the same president as president of Cameroon. I think that he should give way so that a new system can be installed.
At the age of 92 years, he should not be thinking of running again as president. It is not at the age of above 90 years that a person like him will be thinking of a new mandate.
I am not in for the support that an old man of his age should be leading a country like Cameroon, where more than 3/4 of the population is below 50 years old. Does it mean that even in the ruling party, there is nobody who can help this grandpa to go and rest?
More than 100 migrants, including 5 women, have been freed from captivity after being held for ransom by a gang in eastern Libya. A statement by the country's Attorney General said a criminal group involved in organizing the smuggling of migrants, depriving them of their freedom, trafficking them and torturing them to force their families to pay ransoms for their release. Libya has become a transit route for migrants fleeing conflict and poverty to Europe via the dangerous routes across the desert and over the Mediterranean. Officials say 5 suspect traffickers from Libya, Sudan and Egypt have been arrested. Judicial watchdog Judges Matter in South Africa has expressed concern about what it calls a trend of commissions of inquiry functioning like trials, which it says prolongs the investigation process. The remarks come in light of the establishment of a commission of inquiry investigating allegations of criminal syndicates infiltrating institutions within the criminal justice system. This following claims made by the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, who alleged collusion between the judiciary and criminal organizations, amongst other issues. Mbegezeli Benjamin is from Judges Matter.
A commission of inquiry should not be a trial. It should be an inquiry into the facts, and those facts should be handed over to the relevant authority to take concrete action. Unfortunately, what we've seen in recent times is commissions of inquiry have turned into trials in and of themselves, and that's what elongates them or drags them much longer than they should be.
Lastly, the World Health Organization has warned that years of progress on childhood vaccination are at risk of being reversed due to disinformation. It has also cited increased conflict and the U.S. government's funding cuts. The BBC's Imogen Fox.
Diseases like polio, diphtheria or measles can be prevented, even virtually eradicated. But now funding cuts have disrupted dozens of vaccination programs. Conflict is putting more and more children out of reach, and in wealthy countries, vaccine hesitancy, fueled by misinformation, is growing. In the last 12 months, there have been major measles outbreaks in 60 countries, compared to just 32 countries 2 years ago.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, so South Africa opened their T20 Tri-Series campaign with a 5-wicket victory over Zimbabwe in Harare yesterday, while Banyana defeated Mali by 4-0 to top Group C and set up a quarter-final matchup with Senegal this coming Saturday. Details of these and other stories coming up at 8:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
So, Cameroon's 92-year-old President Paul Biya has announced that he'll run for another 7-year term, a move that sparked debate across the continent. Meanwhile, Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni, who's been in power since 1986, is also preparing to seek yet another term at the age of 81. This morning, we're asking the question, why do some African leaders stay in power for decades? What does this mean for democracy and democracy, development and political renewal? And we begin this conversation in Cameroon. And to help us understand the political context in Cameroon, the President Paul Biya's decision to run again, we're now joined by Professor Elvis Ngole, who's a senior member of the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, the CPDM party, and serves as the coordinator of its political academy. Thank you for joining us, Professor. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Peter. And it's a pleasure to be on a Channel Africa News program.
President Biya, he's 92. Really, can he still run the country at that age?
Well, first of all, we are a constitutional republic, just like South Africa is. And as a constitutional republic, the political system in general and the democracy that has been adopted, elections function on the basis of the constitution. And as far as from a constitutional standpoint, the minimum age for running for the office of president is 35, and the constitution does not specify a maximum age. Therefore, from a constitutional standpoint, and even from the standpoint of the electoral code, the maximum age, which is a number.
Okay, so the law allows him to. What I'm asking is, does he still have the ability to?
Well, that part, it's a question. It's every individual manages their health or their age or their bodies I mean, that is, I think it's only a doctor, a medical doctor or so, who can make that that determination. But from what I know, so far, President Biya has shown the determination. He has shown that he's in good health. And that
how has he shown that he's in good health? When was the last time he made a public appearance?
I mean, as far as I know, he was around on 20th May, the last 20th May. We all were there, and no one has said that he is out of sight. I mean, he lives just like any citizen.
Okay.
And
let me ask you this:
there is no issue on that, unless someone wants to make it an issue.
Let me ask you this: last appearance, 20th of May. That's almost 2-3 months ago. Why would he announce something so important as his candidature for presidency on social media instead of appearing in public and showing people that is fit for purpose?
Oh, no, there are many methods of political communication or communication in general. I think President Biya is not the only one who enjoys the method or uses the method of high tech or the digital method. Others do that. I mean, a leader, a manager, an actor can decide to use any communication method. I think it all depends on the person. If the message goes through, if the law permits that, and if it's effective enough.
Is everyone in your party happy to be led by a 92-year-old who'll be 100 at the end of his term?
Well, as far as our party is concerned, the militants are militants of mostly militants of faith, militants of conviction, and therefore the party militants have no problem with their national chairman or their national president, who is President Biya. That is a matter of faith. That's a matter of conviction, and so far, the party militants are happy with his leadership of the party. After all, the record is such that he has the political vision. They admire his political philosophy.
Professor, at 92.
Yes.
Shouldn't he be retiring?
Don't forget, in the Bantu tradition, and I'm sure that I'm not teaching you anything about that. Age is a mark of wisdom. Age is a mark of it's a gift from God, and age is a mark of.
Is there no one else in Cameroon who can run the country? I mean, you know.
There are many. Cameroon has about 30 million citizens, and there are many. And as a republic, we have to believe that there are many.
So why doesn't he retire?
All 30 million cannot be president at the same time.
Why doesn't he retire?
Well, that's a matter of personal choice, and is also a matter of the party that he belongs to. Don't forget, the announcement states clearly, he has responded to the many calls from his party militants, both at home and in the diaspora, and from other Cameroonians who admire his vision and they think that he has the wealth of experience and the wisdom. We shouldn't forget that in African tradition, wisdom matters, experience matters. And so far, the context in which we live in Cameroon is a context in which we need a leader who is like a Moses. We need a leader who has a sense of ponderation. We need a leader who has a great sense of wisdom, and naturally, experience counts in this matter.
How much time does he actually spend in Cameroon each year? The reports are that he spends a large part of each year in France and in Europe.
Well, as far as I know, I happen to have been honored and I happen to have been privileged to have been his minister for several years. And during my time as a minister, I traveled the world over with him. And as far as I know, he spends a lot of time in Cameroon. In fact, as far as I know, in the last
but the
year,
public don't see him.
He has spent much of his time in Cameroon.
But people don't see him.
Well, everybody has a way of life. I mean, it's no two persons have the same way of life. But as long as he is not violated any law, as long as the party militants and the citizens have not been humiliated or have not their rights have not been abused, as long as the country is functioning, the institutions are functioning, and everybody is going about their business as they are supposed to.
What we're
that's
hearing,
a management style. It's a question of style, a leadership style.
What we're hearing from the streets is that people are fed up and they want him gone.
Well, as you know, political management or leadership is not based on the streets, and it's not done by the streets. There's no doubt that the streets have a their own way of looking at things. But you know as well as I do that political decisions or policy making is not made from the streets and is not dictated by the streets, because we understand the psychology and the culture of the streets. I mean, policy making is deliberate, thoughtful, organized thinking, and sometimes the street moves on the basis of emotion or on the basis of passion. But policy making is not based on passion, it's not based on emotion. And so the streets may be one thing, but the policy making continues. At the end of the day, you wait for the day of the ballot and see who wins the day.
Speaking about the ballot, he's been long accused of rigging elections. What's your reaction to that?
No, accusations of rigging the elections are accusations made by people who want cheap popularity or who have no more argument or who do not accept that they have failed. I think that rigging is not a Cameroonian phenomenon. Rigging is a universal word. First of all, it's an English word, and English is not a Cameroonian native language. That means that rigging is a word which is understood, which in its conception or in its meaning dates as far back as the beginning of the dictionary. I mean, we are all humans, and in every society or in every political system, in every country, there are some persons who, rather than understand exactly how processes occur, they quickly jump into concluding that, there has been rigging. I mean, if you look at the whole idea or the notion of rigging, you come to see that those who make accusations that there has been rigging, I mean, they themselves are not so clean.
Right. Prof, we're going to have to leave it there, but one last question. Hand on your heart, is it okay for a 92-year-old to be running for presidency of a country where the average age is probably around 19? Hand on heart, do you really support this?
Given the Cameroonian context, and particularly in the African context, we see...
No, you personally, do you support this?
No, I rather don't bring my personal views into this, because we are part and parcel of a whole. We are part and parcel of a national community, and as a nation, there are values. As a nation, I mean, there are norms, there are traditions, there are customs, and I'm driven by those norms, by those values. And in our values, as Bantus, as Africans, a father is always someone you respect. A father is always someone you submit to. A father is a leader, is a guide. And I'm a believer, I'm a Christian. And we believe that as long as the law has not been violated, as long as the traditions and values have not been violated, you go along, you function. And until there's proof that something has gone wrong. So far, nothing has gone wrong that would permit me to see otherwise.
Professor, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much indeed for sharing your thoughts with us.
Have a good day, and may God bless you.
Thank you so much. That's Professor Elvis Ngole, who's a senior member of the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, CPDM party, saying that he's not going to give his personal view, but he'll follow the national view that a Moses-like figure is what Cameroon needs at this time.
This Mandela Month, we honor his belief that education is the most powerful weapon to change the world.
Education is one of the most important weapons in a country.
Catch us on DSTV Bouquet 802. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Let's get further analysis now on this particular topic, being joined by Kwezi Mngabisa, Africa analyst. Africa witnessing several leaders holding on to power for extended periods. Why is this the case? Kwezi, thank you for joining us. Always great having these catch-up sessions with you. How are you on this Tuesday?
Thank you very much, Asanda. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm very well. I hope the same with yourself and the team in studio.
We are. Thank you very much. This attitude of African leaders to cling to power for as long as they can, what is it rooted in as it pertains to our African history? Is it because power was taken away from us through slavery, colonization, and apartheid, and we now pedantically want to cling on to it like a sort of trauma response?
I think in part, Asanda, because we're pretty kind to this grim situation. You call it an attitude, but it can't really be an attitude where you repeat it 8 times. It becomes who you are. President Biya has been in power since 1982. President Museveni has been in power since 1986. Both of them are our elders, most senior of elderly numbers, as it were. The reality of the matter is that it's an interplay of a number of factors. One, created by these representatives, or the epitome of big men politics, where nothing will happen in Cameroon or Uganda without the say-so or the will of a President Biya or a President Museveni. Now, that is given. We're all foolish in our own ways as individuals, and power might corrupt us or power might consume us. But the other factors in this interplay is the state of governance and democracy in the country. We're talking about it in political cultures that are not necessarily grooming or progressive. At the same time, we're talking about societies that live for the savior mentality that says that the new economic opportunities that are being provided by rare earth minerals as found in strategic natural resources found in these countries can only be exploited with the steady hand of a Biya or a Museveni. So the culture encourages it, the political culture, the institutions reflect that culture, and society at large is organized according to there being a savior, there being an elder, there being one man who takes the decisions. And this is very dangerous. It points to backsliding of democracy. It points to governance being weakened and institutions being perverted.
Instances where African leaders changed the law and constitutions to stay in power. Paul Biya removed a 2-year term limit for a president in Cameroon so that he could extend his rule past 2011. Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, who blocks his opponents using the law. We know the case of Bobi Wine there, who was tackled by state security agencies, Bobi Wine being the opposition figure. Paul Kagame, another example, changed the constitution to extend a 2-year limit for a president, as well as Chad, under the leadership of Idris Deby. Can it be seen as lack of or no will to have robust succession planning?
It's interesting the phrases you choose, Asanda. I mean, it's applicable. Succession planning sounds like a very corporate exercise. The reality of the matter is that if the pool from which we are going to draw those that can succeed the president is not as progressive, is not as far-sighted, we're not going to win this particular war. In all the cases you've mentioned and many others that define the landscape of politics in Africa, there are always signs, and many of us always act surprised. There are always signs. I mean, if you look into the 3 cases that we've mentioned, as well as many more, the reality of the matter is that we start seeing the foolishness or the mischief being done with tampering with the constitution, suppression of the opposition, centralized control over institutions, as well as, of course, the improper management of the important event or process of elections, where the presidency, the ruling party, the government wants to be the one, or one important institution such as the military has to be in charge of the elections. These are the signs that actually tell us that we're not going to particularly win with whatever the will of the people is going to be reflected as in the outcomes of those elections, because democracy, governance is not only about who wins elections, it's about the conduct of those that are given this responsibility, managing the expectations and moderating the narrow interest of within society. So when somebody or grouping of people or an institution in government actually wants their own voice and their interest to prevail over everybody else, they're not going to do a good job. So this then lays the foundation for this grouping, for this individual, and the interplay of the interest of the individual with the group that is in power to continue to prolong their stay in office.
Gabon and Togo have kept power within their family dynasties and ruled for more than 50 years. Zimbabwean President, another example, Emerson Mnangagwa, appointed his son, his nephew and his wife into his cabinet after his 2023 re-election. Can we see this as something that can contribute to, first of all, free and fair elections? And is that a thing, or that's just a concept on the African continent? And the protection of human rights, how do those get achieved if we're going to keep power within our families?
I think more than anything else, this particular, not a line of questioning, but this conversation line by yourself and I, Asanda, has been well cultivated and litigated, as it were, as the issues have been litigated broadly: human rights governance, elections, free and fair, and so on and so forth. The reality that is worrying for myself is that even in countries where you have got term limits that are respected, the conduct of those in power make young people disconnected, and they are a major important demographic force currently and going into the future, especially in Africa. So when these young people get disconnected, you then find mamas in society that actually admires unconstitutional changes of government, such as coups, because they say that it does not work, this democracy thing of yours that you have been talking about. This independence that we've talked about has not delivered the economic dividend for us as young people, as the most affected and the most potent force for innovation in society. So what we are having right now is a moment of serious reflection whereby we are going to say the event of election is important. The constitutional formats that actually limit terms is important. But more importantly, it gives us a moment of serious grave pause to say, is the conduct of those who respect democracy, the rules, and conduct themselves in a democratic manner giving the dividend that will make people committed into this form of government that should be allowing all interest to be litigated and to be taken under consideration in managing a country.
Can we blame African voters? Do we as the citizens not take as seriously our voices at the polls?
Asanda, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I've just come back from a seminar of young Africans just yesterday. Mm-hmm. The reality of the matter is that I came out very despondent because they are saying, you people in the media and you colleagues in civil society and thought leadership spaces, you think that we take politics seriously. We know the importance of politics, but the politics at play right now are not helpful to us. So we're coming up with alternative forms of self-organization, of agency, of economic prosperity creation, and so on and so forth. So the voters, when they get disillusioned, it makes it easier then for problematic forms of governance to take place, like coups, like, for example, people who want definitive conflicts or wins, that just to say that let's just kill the other group, or let us keep them out of government, or let us kick them out of our country, and so on and so forth. So what we have, these are reminders and stark reminders for us all to say that perhaps we need to be investing more and more in the quality of our governance so that everybody has got a stake in the governance of our countries, and everybody plays by the rules and follows those rules.
You mentioned the issue of military coups. So if it won't be the youth that brings about change in terms of the future on our continent when it comes to leadership, can we look to military coups to be our only hope in changing the leadership narrative on the continent? The military coups are on the rise in Burkina Faso. We've seen Mali. We've seen examples of Niger, Gabon as well.
Asanda, the reality of it as we speak this morning is that if the youth will not protest until a dictator leaves, The military, in all likelihood, will step in. But there is now a very nuanced reality that we've come to experience, whereby militaries who have been the stock with which these dictators have lived through or lived by, they are opportunistic in hijacking popular protests or popular uprisings in order not to save the leader, but to save themselves as an institution. Once more, the investment then is not to say we hope for a coup or we hope for a popular uprising. The reality is that the investment must be made in the quality of governance, which all of us, from young people, from media, to thought leadership, to social capital, to business, and so on and so forth, including our regional and continental institutions, must be seriously invested in, because it is not just one set of actors or one set of events, including elections, that will change the fortune of Africans, but an interplay of individuals, actors, agents, as well as these events we talk about.
Kwesi, we'll leave it there for today. Thanks again for your insights. We always appreciate it here at Channel Africa.
Good morning and have a good day, ma'am.
Thank you. Kwesi Mngabisa is Africa analyst, talking to us about the leaders in the continent or on the continent always clinging to power for extended periods, and why that is the case. A topic that I think it takes more than one conversation, even more than one day to unpack. At 8:30 Central African Time, let's say good morning to Onel Nzinzi with our news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Nigeria's late former president, Muhammadu Buhari, who died in a London clinic on Sunday at the age of 82, will be buried in his northern home state in Katsina today. Even though he is a former president, there will not be a state funeral in line with Islamic teachings. More than 100 migrants, including 5 women, have been freed from captivity after being held for ransom by a gang in eastern Libya. And President Donald Trump says he is not done with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. He said this after giving a green light for the new transfer of arms to Ukraine. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
It's time for some sports. Good morning, Musibudi, Rachel Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Ndoro will start here. So South Africa opened their T20 series campaign with a 5-wicket win over Zimbabwe in Harare yesterday, chasing 142 runs for victory. The Proteas slipped to 38 for the loss of 3 wickets inside 6 overs before debutant Ruben Herman as well as Devald Brevis steadied the innings with a 72-run stand for the 4th wicket. So Brevis blasted 41 of just 17 balls, including 5 sixes, while Herman anchored the chase with a composed 45 runs. George Lindy meanwhile starred with the ball taking 3 for 10 as Zimbabwe were restricted to 141 for the loss of 6 wickets during despite a fighting 54 from captain Sekanda Radza. Now South Africa will next face New Zealand on Wednesday as the tri-series continues at the Harare Sports Club. Meanwhile, Ben Stokes once again inspired England to a 22-run victory over a stubborn India on a tense and a final day of the 3rd test at Lords. The captain delivered a monumental shift with the ball to claim 3 wickets as India were bowled out for 170 runs. In an epic conclusion, the host side had victory in their grasp until nerves were frayed by outstanding defiance from Ravindra Jadeja. Now chasing 100 at 93 runs, India were just 112 for the loss of 8 wickets when Jadeja was joined by the number 10 Jasprit Bumrah. They were also together for almost 22 overs until Stokes, who bowled tirelessly from the nursery end, drew Bumrah into a pull to mid-on. Now Bumrah's contribution to the stand of 35 was 5 from 54 balls, and still Jadeja resisted, and this time with the last man being Mohammad Siraj. Stokes then refused to stop bowling. A delayed tea was then taken with about 30 required for India. Captain Stokes says the bowling and his bowling performance in particular in England's final day win over India at Lord's was the toughest of the dark places he has been during a test match. Now, Stokes was also named the player of the match for his all-round performance in a dramatic 22-run victory, including 2 wickets on the final day as the Tourists were bowled out for 170 runs. On to football news now. Orlando Pirates head coach Abdulislam Wadu believes that his squad is starting now to blend and also understand what is needed by the technical team. Wadu was speaking just after watching his team being held to a draw by Cyprian champions, that is Pavos FC, over the weekend. Now, this was Pirates' second international friendly match in the European pre-season tour in Spain, this after losing 2-0 to Bolton Wanderers also over the weekend. Wadu shares more details of what they were trying to achieve in this game over Pavos.
Yes, of course, we have decided to change the plan because this team, you can say that it's one of the strongest team in Europe in terms of building, lot of rotation, and sometimes this team can put us in trouble. So we decided to play very high to prevent this team from building. It worked. I'm very happy about the plan, but we only did this pressing. We only played, especially in the first half, we had the control, the possession, and we can see that our team step by step is getting better. They start to understand exactly the expectation of the coach.
Now, analysing the first 2 matches on tour, Wadu also says both games are helping with them in the content they need now as they continue to prepare for the new season. He also talks about the importance of reacting differently to results compared to just how fans are handling it.
But the first game was very interesting in the contents. Of course, we conceded in the set pieces, but a lot of interesting things. And now, today, it was only the continuity of the work that boys are doing, and step by step, I know that this team will come stronger and stronger. I'm very confident about that.
And finally, Manchester United manager Ruben Amorim was joined by players Bruno Fernandes as well as Diogo Dalot at Anfield to pay tribute to Portuguese compatriots Diogo Jota as well as his brother Andre Silva on behalf of the Old Trafford club. Now, Fernandes as well as Dalot were international colleagues of Jota and all part of the Portugal squad that beat Spain to win the UEFA Nations League in June. Jota and his 25-year-old brother Silva, who was also a footballer, died in a car crash on the 3rd of this month in the Spanish province of Zamora. Amorim, Fernandes as well as Dalot laid some flowers among the vast amount of tributes which have been placed just outside Anfield since the passing of Diogo Jota. Liverpool have retired the number 20 shirt worn by Jota across all levels of the club and also played their first match since his death when they faced off with Preston in a pre-season friendly match at Deepdale on the 13th of July. It's 8:37 a.m. Central African time, and that concludes your sports news this morning on Africa Rise and Shine. I do return with more sporting updates in the next hour with the On The Move team. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. In this episode of Channel Africa Conversations, Peter talks to Dr. Tulisile Buddha, an academic, author, and an expert in indigenous knowledge systems. Join us for a compelling discussion on preserving African languages and traditions in the digital era. Dr. Tulisile unpacks the role of educators, explorers, and how technologies like AI can support cultural preservation, and challenges us to rethink how we honor African heritage. You can find the episode on YouTube, SABC Plus, and on our website, channelafrica.co.za. This episode is a must-listen for educators, creators, and change makers across the continent. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's find out about Zambia's State Mining Corporation pushing for the U.S. to grant it exemptions from proposed import duties as we get the latest in the world of business. Here's Buntle Headbush with our economics news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda. Good morning. As you mentioned, Zambia's State Mining Corporation is pushing for the U.S. to grant the country exemptions from proposed copper import duties. This comes after U.S. President Donald Trump announced that his administration would impose a new 50% tariff on all copper imported into the U.S. from the 1st of August. Head of the Zambian Consolidated Copper Mines, Kakenenwa Muyangwa, says the U.S. tariffs could undermine a major infrastructure initiative such as the Lobito Corridor project, which aims to facilitate the export of critical raw materials, particularly copper and cobalt. He explains the other adverse effects that this will have.
So essentially, what this will do to any company that's mining and refining within the United States is that it will push their prices up and they'll get more revenue. So this is the mining companies and the refining companies in the USA simply just playing along with politics on the basis of greed, because it does not make any sense. Besides them getting higher profits, there's going to be shortages of all these metals within the USA. And when they are going to be made available, they're going to be more expensive. So it really doesn't make sense.
E-hailing drivers in South Africa are planning a shutdown today. They're expected to gather in Kramerville, north of Johannesburg, before marching to Uber headquarters in Parktown. The operators say they are unhappy about a number of work-related issues, including alleged changes to Uber's commission percentages and unprofitable trip prices. E-hailing driver Awelani Mashete says they will continue with the shutdown until they get what they want.
We're saying as the Uber drivers, we will continue with the strike until they've answered our demand. So until they heard our grievances, which is the price. We're not fighting for many things, but we are only fighting for a price.
Deputy Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, Rashad Kassim, says the G20 functions at its best in times of trouble. He was speaking on the sidelines of the G20 Finance Working Group meeting of senior officials at Zimbabwe on the KwaZulu-Natal North Coast yesterday. After this two-day meeting, G20 finance ministers and heads of central banks will meet at the end of the week. Kassim has highlighted the role of the G20 that it played during the 2009 financial crisis. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it was also a vehicle to decide on funding and the distribution of resources. Kassim says at the moment, the world is grappling with countries' debt problems as well as wars in Ukraine and the Middle East.
The challenge we're going to face at this meeting is really have a conversation around the table to kind of assess what exactly is the source of imbalances in the global economy. Are there real concerns that some countries are more protectionist than others? So it's really about creating an environment where we can have a constructive conversation on the trade issues.
Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, says that it's important for Africa to position itself with strength and determination. He spoke at the 7th Mid-Year Coordination Meeting in Malabo, capital of Equatorial Guinea, on Sunday. Under the theme of justice for African people through reparations, the conference discussed various issues, including the regional integration process in the continent. Yusuf also encouraged the further utilization of natural minerals.
Le marché unique africain et à terme.
We have to show how much Africa weighs on this international scene. For example, Africa has more than 50% of the reserves of manganese and other minerals. These are strategic minerals. And if we commit ourselves to transform these raw materials like copper and other minerals in Africa, I think Africa would be the driving force of world growth, according to many experts.
L'Afrique deviendra.
U.S. President Donald Trump has announced the imposition of secondary tariffs of 100% if Moscow does not agree to a ceasefire deal with Ukraine within 50 days. The tariff threat would target countries that trade with Russia, particularly in the oil, gas and uranium sectors. Trump was speaking alongside NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in the Oval Office, where he also confirmed that the United States would send weapons to NATO, including Patriot missile systems and batteries, that would then be transferred to support Ukraine's defensive capabilities in its war with Russia.
I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there. So based on that, we're going to be doing secondary tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. It's very simple. And they'll be at 100%. And that's the way it is. That can be more simple. It's just the way it is. I hope we don't have to do it.
And now if I look at the indicators, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,527 naira. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 20. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 54. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 16. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 56. Russia, 77 rubles 98. India, 85 rupees 89. In China, it's 7 yuan 16. And South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 90 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,358 per ounce and platinum at $1,408 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $68.88 a barrel. And those are your business news. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459 for Channel Africa Business. I am Buntle Hetbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Anaitwa Daniel Etienne Benson. Huyu alizaliwa mwaka 1997, ilikuwa Mei 14, na anajulikana kitaalamu kabisa kwa jina la muziki BNXN. Haya, ni mwanamuziki huyo, ni mwimbaji kutoka nchini Nigeria, mtunzi wa nyimbo na mtayarishaji wa record label. Ameshirikiana na Rema kwenye wimbo huu. Rema vile vile ni msanii kutoka huko nchini Nigeria.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the country's national rugby team, the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starting 13 July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2, tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache, and the heroes that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere. No subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Law enforcement agencies from Botswana, Namibia and South Africa have come together in a joint operation to enhance security and compliance along the crucial Trans-Kalahari Corridor, a major trade route connecting the three countries. This corridor is vital for regional trade and economic integration, facilitating the smooth movement of goods and people across borders. Channel Africa's Shingirai Madondo reports from Gaborone, Botswana.
Senior Assistant Commissioner Pilane Sibir within the Botswana Police Service, who served as the spokesperson of the 15th Trans-Kalahari Corridor Joint Law Enforcement Operation held under the theme Seamless Borders, Seamless Trade, Securing the Trans-Kalahari Corridor for Enhanced Economic Growth, described the exercise as a success.
The 15th Trans-Kalahari Corridor Joint Law Enforcement Operation, otherwise known as the TKCJLEO, has come to a successful end after a hectic 3 days of operational activities at Junction 44 near Khanzi. This annual JLEO is carried out by the TKC member states being Namibia, Republic of South Africa, and of course Botswana. The operation was as big as we had envisaged, and more than 300 operators from the three countries took part. Besides encountering TKC users who were on the wrong side of the law, I'm very happy to indicate that most users were compliant and very cooperative.
Sibir added that there's need to harmonize protocols and procedures between Botswana, Namibia and South Africa in order to facilitate motorists using the Trans-Kalahari Corridor seamlessly.
We have realized that we still need to continue collaborating as member states to make sure that the TKC is taken care of, to make sure that it is safe to travel on, to make sure that there is compliance throughout, to harmonize protocols and procedures that are in different countries being performed by different operators along the corridor.
The governments of Botswana, Namibia and South Africa formalized their commitment to the advancement and smooth operation of the Trans-Kalahari Corridor to show good neighborliness, according to the Namibian Minister of Works and Transport, Veiko Nekundi. He said the landmark agreement signifies a collective aspiration to foster trade relationships and ensure unhindered movement of goods and individuals across the corridor and the broader region.
The joint management of transport corridors is crucial for enhancing regional trade, economic growth, and development by improving efficiency, reducing costs, and fostering collaboration among participating countries. This joint approach facilitates seamless movement of goods and people, leading to increased trade volumes, reduced transportation time and expenses, and improved access to markets and services.
The TKC is a road network spanning approximately 1,900 kilometers across the territories of Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa. The corridor is a conduit for economic growth and development for the entire region in fulfilling the objectives of the Southern African Development Community of SADC Protocol, African Union Vision 2063. Reporting for Channel Africa from Gaborone here in Botswana, this is Shingra Madondo.
The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
Mazuka Wanji Nonse, Zukani, the Shy Guy, a Morning Switch.
Have you ever listened to a song and then it gives you goosebumps? It takes you way back in the 80s. My goodness. Woo. Hey, baby. You hear Yvonne Chaka there. I wanna talk to the DJ. And then the DJ goes like, hey baby, I've got you on the other side. Huh? There were no WhatsApps then, right? There were no sliding in the TMs at the time. Oh man.
Your weekend mornings are activated with the Shy Guy on the Morning Switch. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Trust in South Africa's police service is at an historic low, and that's according to the latest findings from the Human Sciences Research Council, the HSRC, long-running South African social attitudes survey. Round 21 of the survey shows a sharp and sustained decline in public confidence in the South African police service, with less than a quarter of South Africans saying that they trust the police. Now, the findings come at a time when the spotlight is on the country's law enforcement institutions. Just this past weekend, President Cyril Ramaphosa placed Police Minister Senzo Mchunu on special leave following explosive allegations by KwaZulu-Natal's Provincial Police Commissioner, Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, pointing to widespread political interference and corruption within the South African police service. Well, to unpack the data and its implications, we're now joined by Dr. Stephen Gordon, who's a senior research specialist in the Developmental, Capable and Ethical State Division at the HSRC. Dr. Gordon, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you very much for speaking with me and drawing light to this important and relevant issue in our country.
So, round 21, I mean, this is a fascinating survey that you've been running for many years now. Tell us about how you gather these attitudes and come up with these findings.
So the Human Science Research Council is in a very unique position because the council runs high-quality public opinion surveys every year for more than 20 years. So in this particular case, our data goes back all the way to 1998, in which we asked a nationally representative sample of South Africans whether they trusted or distrusted SAPS. And we can run it all the way up until 2024, allowing a unique time perspective on how trust in the police has fallen over time, how distrust in the police has grown over time. So we can see a sharp and sustained rise in distrust in the police ever since 2016, moving from 48% of the population saying they distrust the police. Now in 2024, 62% of the population said they distrusted the police. So it's not just the trust in the SAPS is low, distrust in the SAPS is very, very high.
Do they explain why they've lost trust in the police?
So absolutely. So when looking at this data, the most important thing is, why do we see the kinds of trends that we see? Why have people lost faith in the SAPS? So firstly, it's quite clear that there is a concern about crime reduction in communities. Many communities told us that they feel that crime is too high in their communities, that crime is increased. They feel dissatisfied with the job of the authorities in reducing crime. And when asked about the effectiveness of the police, they feel that the police are not doing a good job. They're not effective at the reduction of crime. These are what is primarily driving distrust in the police. But if we look at the trend over time, what we can see is that certain big events damage confidence in the police, and that damage has been sustained. So, for example, think about the unrest in July 2021, where the police proved unable to contain riots predominantly in KwaZulu-Natal. This occurred during a period in which the public was a bit wary of the police following the COVID lockdown and was expressing some apprehension at the heavy-handed tactics used during that period. Then you have the July unrest, which seemed to increase distrust. That increase in distrust more sustained than we would have seen with other big periods of unrest that we've observed previously in South Africa.
Dr. Gordon, is there any hope? Are there any green shoots, any pockets of good news?
So it's very unfortunate that trust is hard to rebuild. To rebuild trust, you need to perform as an institution effectively and fairly. This demonstrates to the public this institution can be invested confidence in, and you can put your faith in, and then trust can be rebuilt. But that takes sustained, prolonged work. But we have seen in this country periods where you have turnaround. I mean, if we think about how HIV/AIDS was managed in the 1990s and the early 2000s, a lot of public dissatisfaction with how the epidemic was managed by the authorities. Meaningful changes were made, and we saw a big turnaround in how satisfied people were with HIV/AIDS prevention. So it is possible to have a turnaround, but it does require meaningful and large-scale action. And that is what is needed to convince the public that this matter is being taken seriously. Right. We need to see lower levels of crime. We need to see a police force which cares about its citizens, a police force that is on the side of civilians and not on the side of narrow, corrupt interests.
Yeah. Dr. Gordon, we're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately, but thank you so much indeed for painting a very clear picture on the situation on the ground. Thanks for your time.
That's a pleasure.
That's Dr. Stephen Gordon, Senior Research Specialist in the Developmental Capable and Ethical State Division of the HSRC. Palesa, I know you trust the police.
Okay,
moving right along. What's coming on the move?
All right, in the first hour of the show, we're going to be speaking about the Maputo Protocol. That's the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, on the rights of women in Africa. It's 22 years since its anniversary, but many African countries still have reservations, and these reservations continue to dilute the rights of women on the African continent. So we're going to be speaking about reclaiming the Maputo Protocol and making women's rights non-negotiable with Jikuku Karugu, Program Officer of Legal Equality at Equality Now. And then today in our Money Matters feature, we take a look at a relationship concept that's been debated for over many years now, and that's the 50-50.
Yeah, of course.
That's the 50-50 concept. And I think it looks so different now because people keep in mind the emotional, the physical labor, as well as the financial labor.
Yes.
How do you split a relationship 50-50? And is it even possible? We'll speak about that in today's Money Matters.
So then that was not supposed to be transactional. We've gotten it all wrong. And the social media era also makes it worse. Right.
Great.
To the end of our show as Africa Rise and Shine. Catch us tomorrow 6 till 9, and thank you so much for tuning in. Goodbye from me, Asanda, Beda.
And from me, Peter Ndoro. Have an awesome day. Still to come, Palesa and Benjamin with On the Move. But first, here's your news with Onelin Sinsi. Bye-bye.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Looking at your top stories, Nigeria's late former President Muhammadu Buhari's burial expected later today, and the U.S. President says he is not done with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. Your latest news, greetings to our listeners. Nigeria's late former President Muhammadu Buhari, who died in a London clinic on Sunday at the age of 82, will be buried in his northern home state of Katsina today. The Nigerian government has also declared today a public holiday to honor the former president who died in London after battling ill health for years. Katsina State Governor Dick Orada, who returned to Nigeria after being with Buhari's family in the British capital, said the funeral initially expected yesterday had been delayed due to logistical reasons. Even though he is a former president, there will not be a state funeral in line with Islamic teachings. Islamic cleric Abdullahi Karabaka said Buhari will be buried as quickly as possible, but in a simple ceremony. More than 100 migrants, including 5 women, have been freed from captivity after being held for ransom by a gang in eastern Libya. A statement by the country's Attorney General said a criminal group involved in organizing the smuggling of migrants, depriving them of freedom, trafficking them, and torturing them to force their families to pay ransoms for their release. Libya has become a transit route for migrants fleeing conflict and poverty to Europe via the dangerous route across the desert and over the Mediterranean. Officials say 5 suspected traffickers from Libya, Sudan, and Egypt have been arrested. Law enforcement agencies from Namibia, South Africa and Botswana met recently in Gauteng, west of Botswana, in an effort to ensure complete compliance of motorists on the Trans-Kalahari Corridor. Under the auspices of the Trans-Kalahari Corridor Joint Law Enforcement Operation, the 3 countries meet annually on a rotational basis to improve services within the corridor, maintaining law and order, and by dealing with criminal activities and to ensure total compliance on the route. Bilane Sipige, spokesperson of the 15th Trans-Kalahari Corridor Joint Law Enforcement Operations, describes the exercise as a success, but has decried lack of harmonization of protocol and procedures being used in the different countries.
The 15th Trans-Kalahari Corridor Joint Law Enforcement Operation, otherwise known as the TKCJLEO, has come to a successful end after a hectic 3 days of operational activities at Junction 44 near Gauteng. This annual JLEO is carried out by the TKC member states being Namibia, Republic of South Africa, and of course Botswana. The operation was as big as we had envisaged, and more than 300 operators from the 3 countries took part. Besides encountering TKC users who were on the wrong side of the law. I'm very happy to indicate that most users were compliant and very cooperative